Just bringing you up to date with the election campaign. The Conservatives have launched their manifesto, £17 billion yesterday they talked about, of tax cuts.
Yes, these are being promised, and they've also promised to address a housing shortage by building 1.6 million new homes.
£8.3 billion was also set aside to fix potholes and resurface roads.
And there'd also be a total ban on smartphones in schools.
On immigration, there's a promise to get flights off the ground to Rwanda every month.
Meanwhile, Labour are set to turn their eye to more local issues, pledging that they are the party of drivers, with a promise to fix 1 million potholes.
Liberal Democrats, they promised to get tough on the water industry. Details announced of a new industry watchdog to tackle water pollution and sewage dumping.
And there are renewed questions today about the safety on the campaign trail for candidates after Nigel Farage was hit again, this time with wet cement and rubbish, whilst he was out and about on the road campaigning.
Let's now look at some of the key moments of what the leaders got up to yesterday.
We will keep cutting taxes in the coming years, meaning that by 2027 we will have halved national insurance to 6%. That is a tax cut, my friends, worth £1,300 to the average worker.
Under Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister, the taxpayer has been losing £1 million every single hour to benefit fraud and error. That is their record. And there are savings to be made. But the idea that the Conservatives' proposals can save £12 billion is pure fiction.
We believe in the long term we need to be back at the heart of Europe. But we're being really clear that we're not going to pretend that's going to be easy. Regrettably, the Conservative Party have so poisoned Britain's relationship with our nearest neighbours, our allies. They've undermined trust.
And I may need to change tactics slightly. But I'm going to make one promise to you and the tens of thousands watching this live, online, and the media. And my promise is this: I will not surrender to the mob. I will not stop campaigning. This democratic process must continue.
So, there we go.
Throughout the election, we'll be hearing from people across the country about what matters to them.
Well, today we're going to meet David Lee. David Lee is from Mansfield. We're going to hear about the issues that matter to him, and the idea is that they matter to him, they may well matter to you.
I'm David Lee, I'm 45, from Mansfield. The biggest issue for me is basically putting money back into people's pockets. Shops are closing, people are out of jobs, and the regeneration of a place like this is really needed. I'm a business owner, I've got a small shoe repair shop. I've got to put my prices up because my costs everywhere have gone up. So to put money back into people's pockets, lower taxes, and get more shops open, that's what I want to see in a place like this. I think people around here feel disillusioned with politics, with government. They talk about all this money that this town's being given to level up, and our money is going to be given to the places in the north to level up. But what levelling up has happened in Mansfield? This marketplace, it used to be full of stalls. Now, as you look at it, there's an handful of stalls. Mansfield has always been Labour. You put a red ribbon on a donkey around here and it would have got in. But then we come to 2017 and it switched allegiances and it went Conservative. And I think a big reason for that was obviously Brexit. In the past, I voted for Labour, for Conservative, even for UKIP. But at the moment, I'm on the fence of which way I'm going to vote, and I'm not going to look at Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer on which one of those I'm going to vote for, or even the other parties. I'm going to look at what the politicians say they're going to do for my town, Mansfield.
Put a red ribbon round a donkey and it would get elected in Mansfield. Let us know your views. That's a good one. Joining us this morning, the Director of Parliamentary Affairs at Legatum, and that's Fred de Fossard, and political commentator John Oxley. Fred, first of all, I'm bored. Bored. I mean, what the heck? You look at these people, they are dullards of the first order. Sunak, you could sleep just watching him all the time. and then Starmer comes on, and then we don't even get to the Lib Dems because they're too busy assing around, doing funfair rides and things. It really is, they really take people, and then what's more, they don't do anything that they promise to do in their manifestos.
It's hard to disagree, Eamonn. When I last came on GB News, you talked about the need for more theatre in politics, and I don't think we've had much theatre since. It's been the manifesto launch is kind of case in point. I think it's sort of nearly 90 pages of pledges and announcements, plenty good things in there, but we haven't really seen an inspiring narrative from a Conservative Party that wants to be re-elected.
You know, I know you say there's plenty of good things in there, but I go, A, I've heard these talked about before. B, why have none of them been implemented up until now? C, is that the best you can come up with? Nothing new. Same stuff, potholes for roads. Good, but hear it again. People talk about it, but you know what? It will not be done. It will not be carried out.
Yeah. Well, your report from Mansfield, I think, was really interesting. The chap who was runs a shoe repair business actually speaks to the sort of thing the Conservative Party should be able to sell to the country and actually historically has been able to. If you listen to his complaints about his business, he's ultimately talking about inflation. He's talking about high cost of living. He's talking about taxation. If you a Conservative Party that campaigns to bring those down and also has a credible plan to bring those down is a Conservative Party that understands the building blocks of prosperity and how to win an election. I think then in the very, very long manifesto, there are bits of that in there that could be brought out a little bit, but a lot of it's got slightly lost, and I think it's been a manifesto which is. It feels like it's a manifesto written by people that have been in government for a very long time.
OK.
You see what I mean?
Well, let's get John Oxley's thoughts in all of this. I'm just sort of casting my eye across the newspapers, and actually the right-wing press haven't given it too bad a write-up, the Tory party manifesto. Guardian saying that it's implausible, and there have been a lot of sort of think tanks saying that the numbers don't necessarily stack up. What's your take on all of this?
Well, I think that's an interesting concern in terms of, you look at this policy in document in the round, and for example, there's this, one of the bolder things that Conservatives are doing is this rolling back of national insurance, particularly for self-employed people and for people more generally. But then you look elsewhere in the manifesto and there's more funding for social care. Now, a couple of years ago, the Tories were saying, we're going to put national insurance up to cover things like social care. And it really speaks to kind of the problems the Conservatives have overall in their policy making, that yes, they want to bring down taxes, but there is a huge demand for government spending. And a lot of those things, like social care, are very necessary, very popular. And there's not, the party haven't yet, and the government haven't yet found a way to square that circle. They quite often talk about efficiency savings, but those are very hard to do. And so far, we've not really seen them materialise. And then you throw into the mix on this something like immigration, where one of the ways they've tried to keep the cost of social care down is by having more visas for people from overseas. But then if you increase that, yes, you keep the wages down in the social care sector a bit, you keep your costs down, but you have this broader problem of more immigration, those people coming in with their dependents as well, not earning a huge amount of money themselves. And it's a very unpopular form of immigration. So sort of like Fred was saying, it's quite hard to see what the Conservative vision is for 5 or 10 years' time in this document. Where are we headed? And how do we really make the changes that the public are looking for, both in terms of what they pay and what they get back from the state?
But they could have gone further. There just wasn't exciting enough, which is what Fred was talking about there. Why didn't Sunak go for broke? I mean, he's going to be out of a job very, very shortly. Why didn't he just say, let's spend, let's be really brave here with certain things?
I think partly it's in his nature, but also it's worth remembering the context in which he was elected leader of the Conservative Party and his whole approach around the relationship between the government and the Office for Budget Responsibility, for example, and the Bank of England, and a sort of particular vision of supposed credibility. So it's which when it comes to the point of a manifesto, which I think a manifesto should always be a very exciting calling card, like a banner for everyone to rally around. And I think John mentioned immigration. I think this is a really good example of the sort of halfway but not all the way approach. So we said the Conservatives say they're going to cap immigration. but they don't name a number. Instead, they say that the person that's going to name a number will be the people at the Migration Advisory Committee.
Yeah,
that's a quango. How could? But you can't go to the public and say we are going to make this great big change, and then actually an unelected organisation will then decide the detail of the change. I feel like, are you here to lead or are you here to?
Voted on by Parliament was their plan, and obviously they've been burnt, haven't they, by putting a number on it, Fred? I mean, I'm interested, John, in all of this, and whether or not you think the right of the party, and perhaps I should be asking Fred this. But, you know, whether or not you think, from your analysis and all this, that, you know, there's been criticism that it hasn't been bold enough for the right of the party. I mean, even in the Telegraph today, they're talking about Nigel Farage already being the leader of the Conservatives, an Alison Pearson comment piece. Could there be a press conference, do you think, in the next couple of weeks coming from the right of the party, as was being threatened yesterday, calling for more, even pulling out of the ECHR?
I think there is a chance of that. I mean, what we are going to see, most likely, the polling's not going to move very much. More and more Conservatives are going to be concerned about what comes after the election and their position in it, and also concerned about their own seats. And we saw this a bit in 1997 in the run-up to the election, where sort of more right-wing MPs would start, you know, putting leaflets out with my personal manifesto, trying to sort of say to their constituents, well, you know, I'm a bit more on the right. You know, I think one a few weeks ago was saying I'm more reform than reform, talking about her personal politics. And I think there's a real chance that we do see in the mix of this election Tory discipline break down a little bit, and some of those figures on the right really try and mark out their own brand, and then, you know, potentially in other seats, other MPs with slightly different patches, you'd see exactly the opposite. And then before you know it, the parties fighting each other rather than fighting their political opponents.
Well, on that note, John Oxley, political commentator, and Fred Fossard, former Conservative Special Advisor and member, actually used to work for the Legatum Institute. Thank you both very much. We should point out the Legatum Institute is part of the Legatum Group and also one of the lead investors in the holding company for GB News. Should also point out we've got Grant Shapps coming on in around half an hour's time. He is the Defence Secretary. His seat is looking very dodgy, whether or not he'll be able to hold it in just 3 weeks' time. We'll be talking to him about that and the Tory party manifesto.
Do you know, being from Northern Ireland, we had politicians who were, you know, who broke the mould, who were different, who didn't play by the rules, who were there whether you agreed with them or not, but were representing their people and they're going for it. What a boring lot this lot is. Really uninspiring. I can see how people switch off from politics and they think, nothing to do with me, get on with it, off you go. Is that just me? Let us know what you think as the time approaches 6:15. Here's some other stories coming into the newsroom this morning.
We start in the US, and President Biden's son, Hunter, has been convicted of lying about his drug use to illegally buy a gun. A jury found the 54-year-old guilty on all 3 counts against him, making him the first child of a sitting president to be convicted of a crime. The president released a statement accepting the outcome of the trial and saying, "I am the president, but I am also a dad. Jill and I love our son, and we are so proud of the man he is today."
The latest survey of social attitudes in the country has revealed a record number of people don't trust the government. According to the survey, 45% of respondents almost never believe governments of any party are fully focused on challenges facing the UK. A record 58% also said they almost never trust politicians of any party to tell the truth. A 19-point increase from 2020. I think that just verifies all that I've been saying this morning, but there we go.
A new species of mosquito has been discovered in 13 countries in the EU, including France, Spain and Greece. Health experts have linked the discovery to the rise of dengue fever in Europe. Warmer conditions have allowed the insect to spread across much of Europe in recent years, travelling alongside humans and through the transportation of goods.
Mallorca's international airport was closed yesterday due to flooding. Flights were unable to take off or land. According to the Mallorcan Daily Bulletin, eyewitnesses described the flooding as chaos, and a local weather station recorded nearly 5 centimetres of water an hour, which is a lot.
See, I don't know what I think about that. Kind of a little bit of schadenfreude, that I'm glad it's not just us that's got rubbish weather. I was in Lisbon at the weekend. They said it's rained twice in the last year, at Christmas, in January and this weekend. Then you've got Mallorca with awful weather, and we're being told here in temperatures in the UK have been consistently 3 to 5 degrees below the seasonal average, and meteorologists foresee no reprieve until next month. What is going on with the weather? It's not June. I lit a fire on Monday night.
Well, it's a big problem if you are on holiday because you're not where you should be and you're caught trying to get a hotel ready or the airports are closed down and all that sort of thing. But all this bad weather is a product, obviously, of global warming.
The jet
Just comes
stream
with
and all
the
of that.
package.
Well, let's get an update on our forecast today. Alex Deakin can tell us what delights we can expect today.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another chilly one out there this morning. For most of us, though, it's going to be a fine day with lighter winds, feeling just a touch warmer than yesterday. But it's certainly cold out there this morning. We've had clear skies through the night. Does mean quite a few of us waking up to blue skies this morning. A few showers are possible today across parts of Yorkshire, down to the East Midlands, East Anglia, 1 or 2 over North East Scotland. But most places dry. Quite a bit of cloud by this afternoon, but still some decent spells of sunshine, particularly in the west. And temperatures a little bit higher than yesterday. Still below average for most of us for the time of year, but with lighter winds, a bit more sunshine, it should at least feel a little bit more like June. Through this evening, I think we'll see those temperatures falling off again pretty sharply. Still quite a bit of cloud coming into the northeast. A few scattered showers likely to continue across the Northern Isles. Still some good spells of sunshine across western Scotland. A bit more clouds across Northern Ireland come the afternoon and sticking around into the evening. The odd shower still possible over eastern England, but most of England and Wales will stay dry through this evening and some good spells of sunshine coming through. But as I said, temperatures dropping pretty speedily under those largely clear skies. It will be a bit of a chilly start again tomorrow morning. Signs of a change though on the way. Behind me the cloud is starting to thicken, the breeze is starting to pick up as well. So through the night it'll turn cloudy across Northern Ireland, western parts of Wales. But elsewhere generally clear skies and temperatures yet again dipping down into single figures, well down in some rural spots. Again, not far off freezing in some locations. Another bright start, though, for many central and eastern areas on Thursday. But here comes that change. Clouding over rapidly. Rain for Northern Ireland through the morning. That rain trickling into West Wales and southwest England, steadily spreading into parts of southwest Scotland and towards the end of the day into the Midlands. Much of eastern England, northern Scotland staying dry until quite late on. Temperatures ticking up a little bit, but still feeling cool as the wind and rain arrives.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
New trend in the country, and that is that the weekend starts today.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I thought Thursday was the new Friday, with
Well, now
everybody going out
Wednesday's
to
the
work
new
from home.
Thursday.
Is it?
Yeah.
Goodness me.
So does anybody do any work in this country, or do they all sit scratching their backsides and enjoying themselves? I mean, I have never, I know you will disagree with me, but I have never seen a more work-shy populace than I do today. There's certain people who work and work and work and don't get much pay
No, I
for it.
completely agree with
and
you,
lots of things are expected of them. And then there's all this work from home lot. I won't even go into it, but anyway, not go into it. It's too personal. But I don't agree with the work with home. I just don't agree with it. I just don't see how it. I can see how certain people say, well, I get a bit of work done, I do this, I do that. Yeah, but you also walk the dog, go to the shops, watch neighbours during the day, whatever the heck you do. You do all these things and do stuff all else. But the weekend starts now. That's what the latest surveys are saying, that people do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then they do no more, and they expect to be paid full wages for it.
Let us know what is wrong with the young. I presume it's the young that's being blamed for that, is it?
Don't know.
Yeah, weekend starts now.
You could, I suppose, win the Great British Giveaway, and that would be even better than a weekend that starts on a Wednesday. £16,000 worth of prizes, £15,000 cash, and then extras on top of that. And here's what you got to do to win.
It's our summer spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash. £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer. Plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Father's Day. Is Father's Day on Sunday?
Yeah.
Well, what do you buy?
I know. Father's Day's tricky.
I mean, if you asked me what I would want...
Time with the kids, I guess. That's the thing that people always say,
Why would you want time with your kids for?
Oh, well, that's another matter. We like spending time with our dads and
Why on earth would you want time with your kids?
I don't know. Maybe have a nice relationship with your children. Maybe love your children. I don't know. Anyway, what would you like for Father's Day if you're a dad this morning? Give us some ideas. I could do with some. I'll be putting a card together with lots of photographs and things. That's about as far as I've got. But yeah, we'll have a nice Sunday lunch all together, I think. Get Grandpa involved. How will you be celebrating yours? Any ideas in the papers there? A pair of socks?
Gifts.
A belt?
Buying hats. I could. A nice Stetson would be good.
Oh, OK. That's a good idea. A hat of some sort. But we'll have a little peruse and have a think what we'd like. After the break, Paul Coit will be here.
A muscle massager. There's a good idea. £64.99. Are you kidding me? 65 quid for a muscle massager. I could hire a person to do that.
Indeed.
Be with me all week.
Exactly, yeah. Can't even reach around with that.
That sort of thing.
All right, more after this.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides.
As you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
The People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides.
As you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
The People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
Here's Coity on this Wednesday morning, and here is the sport. My friend, you think that Manchester United have decided what they're going to do manager-wise?
Yes. They're going to stick. They're not going to twist.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to stick with Erik ten Hag. It's a bit of a bizarre one, though, because it's gone on for ages.
Yeah, but I think they had obviously somebody in mind, and I think most fans probably think after the performance in the FA Cup final, this mightn't be the worst idea in the world.
See, I still think that what often happens is that the decision could have been ready to be made and thinking, right, we'll leave it till after the FA Cup final and then we'll fire him after that because there's a very good chance that we're going to lose. So then they were terrific. You know, as you will know, it was a great performance by Manchester United. Worked out for Erik ten Hag. They win the FA Cup and then it's like, oh, maybe there's something in this. Maybe he's got a tune out of them. Maybe that's how it's going to be. So, but the weird thing is, I don't know how it would be for Erik ten Hag or whether you don't feel sorry for him or whether you do. That, you know, he's got all this money and he's earning very well, but he knows also that the top brass are speaking to other managers while he's on holiday. So
those other managers would have been Mauricio Pochettino.
Yep. Thomas Tuchel is another one.
Tuchel, Gareth Southgate.
Gareth Southgate could have been one. Graham Potter could have been one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very bizarre. So he's had to sit there throughout all of this while they're talking, and then they come back. I mean, it's pretty similar to me because I know that they spoke to Des Lynam. There was Elton Wellesby, Hugh Johns, Archie McPherson was in the running, and they decided they decided to stick with me in the end.
Yeah.
Because I think it's because they all said no. I think, to be honest with you, I have no idea why.
Des,
very similar.
Des was brilliant. Des was
the king.
The best performer that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And basically, he used to say. He said, I don't want to do this job anymore. Do you want to do it? He used to pass me all his work. It was absolutely brilliant.
That's great.
He's very generous to me.
That's
very
great.
good.
But you know what? The thing is, the difference, you've got Des, who, I mean, Des is a lovely man, right? And I guess in real life, because I was saying real life, was exactly the same as the on-screen persona, right? Very cool, calm,
He seemed to be, but very knowledgeable and authoritative. That's the thing. I mean, TV today is full of nobodies who people can't really remember their names or anything, you know. Used to be titans, and now that they're real minnows today, it has to be said. But he was Colossus.
David Coleman loved to shout, though. I tell you,
David Coleman
loved to shout.
Yeah,
there's a great clip of I think it's the 1970 World Cup where all of a sudden he starts screaming and shouting, as if anybody would do that these days. I mean,
1-0.
1-0.
That's what he used to say.
1-0. He'd even say that if it was 3-0.
Yes.
1-0.
1-0.
Talking to the Euros, and you went to Gareth Southgate, because there's talk about Gareth Southgate. Yeah. Maybe there's a chance for Manchester United, which I don't think people would be overexcited about. He said it's now or never as far as England's concerned. So apparently he told Bild magazine. So this is back in April, so they've waited on this to then put the story out now to say that if we don't win, probably I won't be here anymore. But, I mean, it's just a given. I think it's just obvious that this is what's going to happen. And I think he's sticking with this. He truly believes that and I do actually think that England will win the Euros. I do. I actually do. I think this is the best chance. And if anything goes wrong, I think it's probably Gareth Southgate.
Yeah.
But the players are there. They stand a great chance. And I think I'm going to stand by it and say England will win the Euros.
Quickly, let's just talk about Wimbledon, not far away now. And Andy Murray and Emma Raducanu doing their warm-ups. How's it going?
Not great for Andy. I mean, he's in the Stuttgart Open and got knocked out in the first round, so that's not so good. He's now saying... we're wondering, because I know, Isabel, you're going... Was it the Wednesday you're going? Because I'm going on the Tuesday. So we're both wondering whether we're going to see the last Andy Murray performance.
I think you're more likely than I am.
Well, it will be probably in the singles, but there's also talk whether he's going to play in the doubles with his brother Jamie. That's not decided definitely yet. And also whether he plays in the Olympics. Now, you'd think you'd have to qualify to play for the Olympics.
Yeah.
This is him yesterday, by the way. Qualify for the Olympics, but the fact that he's won 2 gold medals and he's won 3 Grand Slams, that automatically means that he can play in the Olympic Games.
You can just drop in at any point.
I know, isn't that crazy? That means Bjorn Borg could go, you know what, I fancy playing for Sweden.
Why not?
Yeah, give it a go, but... Whether he's going to do that, I don't know, because it's playing on clay, which is not his favourite surface. He got knocked out the first round at Roland Garros. So I don't know whether he'll do it. And surely the swan song should probably be Wimbledon, shouldn't it? If you're going to go out, you go out.
Big controversy around this year's hot dog eating competition. This is the world title, the world.
July the 4th.
Yeah.
You've got a clear day, July the 4th, haven't you? Something going on here, July the 4th.
Hot dogs aren't my...
It's an election.
They're not my favourite food, hot dogs, especially when they're these German, whatever...
Bratwurst. Yes.
Frankfurter type thing.
Yeah.
I don't like those.
OK.
Yeah.
Well, when they do this competition, this is a guy called Joey Chestnut.
Yeah.
There's Joey. Joey is the finest speed eater, competitive eater in the world, and he's banned now from the July the 4th Nathan's hot dog competition. This is a huge competition. You know, this earns millions of pounds. It's seen as a big sporting event. So he's banned because he's now sponsored by a vegan hot dog company.
Oh, right.
So there's
it has to be proper meat.
I know.
Hilarious.
But how much... Well, let me ask you this. They get 10 minutes to eat. These are proper hot dogs about this size. So how long does it take... Or I should say, how many do you think they can eat in the space of 10 minutes?
I reckon...
This is not a large man. He's not a great big guy, as you might imagine.
9.
9 hot dogs in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You are so far off.
Really?
50.
You're off as well.
Not more than that.
His world record, which he did 4 years ago, 76 hot dogs.
In 10 minutes?
In 10 minutes.
That's
and he eats them.
actually disgusting.
Eats them all.
Doesn't, swallow them.
Does he tactical vomit?
I think there's a little chew and then a swallow.
My word.
But he often... But they dip them in water because they slide down quicker.
More quickly.
But the thing is, this guy... You would imagine this guy's not like this, but he's not.
He must be sick afterwards.
Well, I don't know where...
He must be. That's not healthy.
What happens afterwards? Nobody asks. I don't know.
I want to know.
I want to know. And the thing is, they drink lots of water, apparently, for practice. So I said, what, you're just weeing all day? I've interviewed these people before. They said, well, no, because apparently it's in the Constitution. Not the American Constitution, the Constitution of them.
Yeah.
So 76 hot dogs.
76,
in 10 minutes.
Oh, well, there we go.
I think these are true sportsmen.
Yeah. And his name's Chestnut.
Joey Chestnut.
OK.
Joey Chestnut.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Coity.
We'll think on
the
that.
other sports news that I spotted this morning, maybe we can talk about it later. McIlroy is getting back with his wife. The shortest
how about that?
lived divorce in 2 weeks or something.
I know.
Very nice to hear.
Very nice.
Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Still to come, we'll be looking at the front pages and the biggest stories of the day next. Don't go away.
The latest GB News travel. Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M602 in Greater Manchester is closed in both directions between junctions 2 and 3, between Trafford Park at Eccles and the Regent Road roundabout for an investigation. There are queues each way as a result. On Merseyside, Balliol Road East in Bootle is blocked eastbound off the A565 Derby Road, where there's an oil spill. In Warwickshire, the A444 is closed each way along Weddington Road off the A5 in Nuneaton after an accident. The M1 in Bedfordshire is closed in both directions for an investigation. Southbound's closed from junction 12, the Toddington and Flitwick turn, down to 11, the A505 Luton and Dunstable turn, causing roughly 3 miles of queues. Northbound's closed from junction 11A for the A5 north of Dunstable up to junction 12, with delays on the A5 as you divert. And in Surrey, the A320 is closed along Woking Road in Guildford after an accident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is about the Biden administration kind of resisting calls from Harry's lawyers whether or not this ongoing thing about releasing his visa records over the alleged, in Spare, he admitted to taking, remember his memoir Spare? He admitted to taking cocaine, marijuana and magic mushrooms. And a lot of people are saying, was he honest and truthful in his application, in his visa application? You have to say, have you taken drugs? He said no, and then in Spare he said yes. So I think this is absolutely fascinating. They're saying they can't release these records because there is a stigma attached to law enforcement records. Yes, there's a stigma attached to that, but then don't say... everybody else, if you write yes on a visa application, you will be chucked out of the United States. You will be denied entry. So I think this is fascinating that on this issue of whether there is a stigma for Harry or not, he can have his law enforcement records not released into the public domain.
The bottom line is, do we want him back?
So what's interesting is it seems to be becoming a political dividing line in the States because Biden is the administration trying to do Harry a favour by keeping them under wraps, but Trump has promised that he will, that the file will be made public if he wins again.
Trump's been very strong on this. He said, if Harry lied, then he's out.
The one thing about America is their politicians make ours look sane. Which is saying something.
I'm slightly confused about this whole story because, OK, sure, Prince Harry has said this. How many pop stars, rock stars, movie stars, like every
the difference is, well, I don't think it's just British. I think millions of Brits, to be fair to them, lie on the form every year. Millions of people from around the world lie on the form every year. Not, of course,
I'm not going to name any pop star specifically, but I would be mightily surprised if any hadn't indulged in what...
Yes, but of course they haven't given written evidence in their biography that they have, and that's the difference.
Britain's election channel.
We say hello, good morning and welcome to Scarlett Maguire and Claire Muldoon, who are reviewing the stories that are making the news this morning. And Scarlett, front page of the Mirror, Rishi Sunak, I didn't have a dish.
I know.
What's he talking about?
Rishi. So in this interview that Rishi left D-Day to go back and do, he said that his parents made a lot of sacrifices, and he was asked to name one, and he said, I didn't have a sky dish, which was obviously an incredible sacrifice. So my children can also complain, because I still don't have a sky dish, and they were certainly brought up without one. And, I mean, it sort of goes from... He doesn't understand. He just doesn't understand what most people get. I mean, I know lots of reasonably poor people have sky dishes, so it's not that. But he just doesn't seem to get it at all.
I don't doubt that his parents made sacrifices, though. I get the impression that they worked round the clock. He worked in his parents' pharmacy. I don't understand why we should bash him constantly because his family worked hard to put him to a school where he was a scholar. He didn't even pay the full fees.
No. I know, but let's not pretend. That's all. That's all.
He was asked the question. What else was he supposed to say? Oh, I've had nothing. I've had a silver-plated life. I don't know. I just think that's an impossible question sometimes.
And of course, and he sets himself. But I mean, actually, what he can talk about quite rightly is how hard his parents worked. That there's absolutely no question that his parents were hard-working, aspirational parents who wanted the best for their son. Instead of saying, well, we didn't have a sky dish. I mean, I just think that
The problem is he puts himself up to be mocked, and that's what the Mirror have done.
What do you think, Claire?
Well, I think that it's not far off the truth from what the Mirror always reports in terms of their Labour bias and their anti-Tory bias. And I think what this election is actually showing is the absolute bias in the newspaper industry from the newspapers themselves. I mean, the fact he didn't have a dish, I mean, Dishy Rishi, I thought that was a great one ahead of the stories there, Isabel. Who cares? I mean, I certainly don't.
It doesn't change anything
It
for me,
doesn't
does it?
change
Yeah.
anything. But the fact he is putting himself out there, he is trying, and unfortunately it's made the headlines of a very Labour-leaning paper.
Well, since you're sort of talking about the political leanings of the papers, I do think it's interesting that the right-wing papers pretty much have been broadly non-critical of the Tory manifesto yesterday, including the Telegraph, who seems to have kind of hitched its wagon to the Tories as opposed to reform. The Guardian, pretty much the only one really going for the sums, calling it implausible. The tax giveaway, they say, is being condemned. Scarlett, what did you make of it all, and what do you make of the way that it's being received?
I find it unbelievable that the Tories go on and on and on about how Labour spending plans means extra taxes, and then they do this. We're going to cut taxes. We're going to do this. We're going to do, and somehow we're going to find savings. I mean, obviously, the first thing you do is you cut the benefits for people, and then all these. I mean, these savings they haven't found for the last 10 years. It's not going to happen. I never ever believe, you know, we're going to find savings and we're going to make things more efficient, because every single government says this every time, of whatever colour. It really doesn't matter. And it's like every health secretary goes in and says, you know, I'm going to save money on the NHS by you know, getting rid of managers, and actually they can't. And I thought it was like...
Heard it all before.
It was like
Claire?
being in Alice in Wonderland.
It's just we don't even need to make the headlines. The headlines make themselves because they don't change. That's the issue. And can we say that that's because politicians don't change? I think so, because it's the same old narrative, it's the same rhetoric, it's the same straw men that they're just coming out with their red flag saying, this is what we're going to do, 74 billion tax cut. I mean, I think your viewers and your listeners will be of the same opinion. We're all just absolutely sick of it. Really are. Absolutely.
Try and tell us.
So, and they're not stupid. I mean, you know, the people of Britain are not stupid, and they know there's no such thing as a free lunch.
But the thing is, Scarlett, we are treated as being stupid all the time. And that's why, and I blame newscasters and news organisations who sit here and repeat the bland lies that come
absolutely
from politicians, instead of saying, that's absolute crud. It's not going to happen. There's no chance of it happening. Why are we even reporting that they're talking about this? And the thing about manifestos, they can promise anything. How often do they ever bring it to fruition, deliver on it?
Never.
I think, to be fair, the 97 manifesto, Blair did keep his promises. I mean, they were low promises. They were, we will cut the waiting list by 100,000. We will have lower thing. But actually, they did it. But you know, then you get Boris Johnson, who says, I've got a plan to solve social care, and we are still. I mean, and the most important thing that this country has to deal with is the problem in social care, and nobody's near it.
Okay.
Well, let's hear about Grant Shapps here. He's the Secretary of State for Defence, so let's go to him and get some opinions. Grant, I don't know if you were listening to us or hearing us, but we're talking about the manifestos that are being published this week and people talking about them. And we were just saying that so often they're not delivered. They're not delivered. It's all talk, and talk is cheap. What would you say?
I'd say it tells you a lot about what the sort of core values of a party are in the manifesto. So I think they're important for that reason. Secondly, I don't think it's true that they're not delivered. I think it is true that sometimes circumstances get in the way, like a 1 in 100 year pandemic would be one of those things, or a war in Europe. I think broadly speaking, actually, governments do try to deliver their manifestos, and in a very important way, which is if something's in your manifesto, then it's much easier pass the legislation on it because of the way. So it's much easier to change the laws if it's in your manifesto, because it will go through the machinery of votes and the civil service much quicker. So it does make a difference for sure.
But it's interesting you're talking about the pandemic, and obviously we're saddled with huge debt trying to pay off a lot of what we had to spend to get through it as the economy shut down. And yet here you are in your manifesto making these huge pledges. Can we afford £17 billion in tax cuts when we've already got cuts to public services baked into the budget and all this debt around our neck? I mean, we were talking about this on the panel about the public being taken for fools. People understand that we can't afford this. So why are you offering it?
So, first of all, we did the responsible thing. We didn't, after the pandemic, do immediate tax cuts. In fact, getting inflation down was the very first priority. And secondly, we fully costed everything in this manifesto. So,
but a number of think tanks have challenged your fully costed manifesto.
Let me just say, there are £17 billion essentially of tax cuts, particularly to national insurance in there, but also assistance for people through things like Help to Buy. So you'll be able to buy a house with a 5% deposit, will permanently scrap stamp duty. And for pensioners, we'll have Triple Lock Plus. That means your pension, under the Conservatives, your state pension will never be taxed, unlike under Starmer, who will tax your pension. So how are we paying for it? Actually, a couple of things which are really important. First of all, we've said that we will deal with the ballooning of the welfare budget, which has, since COVID,
already been squeezed
very much higher, and successfully so. But if we do nothing, it will be, I think it's about £90 billion more, and all we're looking to do is get 12 billion from that budget.
Just a casual 12 billion, and a little brown envelope from down the back of the sofa as well, in making cuts on, tax evasion. I mean, if it was so easy to claw back this money, surely you'd have done it already. 17 billion is huge.
And we have. Actually, tax evasion is a very interesting one that you raise. We've said we'll get 6 billion from tax evasion. We've already managed to get 6.4 billion per annum from that. And I think it was
by stealing from people. By stealing from people, which of which I'm one of them. But this IR 35, which is the most immoral tax, retrospective tax that people don't really understand, that it's going to come for you if you're a window cleaner, a gardener, a teacher, a pharmacist, whatever, where you guys go back and you say, oh, you know the way we said you were freelance or whatever, but actually we've changed our mind, so we're going to look. It's stealing, it's theft.
Well, this is not the particular tax we're talking about here, and I'm sorry you're hit by it, but there's not the particular tax.
So many people are hit by it.
What I was going to say was that Paul Johnson of the IFS actually concedes that we did manage to make the savings that we said we would through changing the tax avoidance rules before. And so when we say we can do 6 billion from that, and when we say we can do 12 billion from not allowing the welfare budget to just carry on expanding. And by the way, it transpires that Labour don't think there's a penny to save from our welfare budget, which, as I say, since COVID, has ballooned. And we'll do that by investing in things like more assistance, a 50% increase in assistance for mental health, talking therapies, things which will help people get into work. So it's actually be good in every direction. And that's how we get to this £17 billion. And we're going to use that to reduce people's, particularly national insurance. And you say, how can you believe it? Well, we've already slashed.
Yes, but since you bring up Paul Johnson, the director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, he said yesterday, forgive me for a degree of scepticism as he cast his eye over the manifesto. But we'll draw a line. We'll agree to disagree on exactly how it will all be paid for. Should we talk about the admission from the Prime Minister yesterday that he was not blind to the fact that people are frustrated with him? Are you one of those? I know that your seat is possibly going to be lost. That's what the polls are saying anyway. And, we look at the latest polls and Reform is only 1 point behind the Conservatives. Do you still have full faith in Rishi Sunak?
Yeah, well, look, first of all, I actually think it takes quite a big person to be prepared to say, you know what, I'm not perfect and I make mistakes. And he has done that, and I think that's the right thing to do. But secondly, he's actually somebody who's also prepared to sometimes do the really difficult things. It's not always easy being a prime minister or in a position of power or authority. And here's someone who doesn't just sort of snipe from the sidelines. He has positive, solid ideas, and you've seen in our manifesto yesterday some big, bold ideas, which I think is much to his credit. As far as my seat's concerned, I'd rather leave it to the electorate than all these opinion polls. Just last month, there was an election here in my seat, and based on that, I most likely would have won the constituency. I'm not saying I will. I'm just saying that let's wait until people have voted. As far as I'm aware, not a single person has yet voted in the general election in this country. And I know that a lot of commentators are keen to tell us it's all over. There have been surprises before. Let's wait and see.
Grant, what would you say to people who are maybe looking for something more bold from the Prime Minister in this manifesto yesterday, and you're thinking the deficit is so bad in the polls for the Conservatives, why didn't he just go for it?
Well, you're back to the polls again, but I would say that our manifesto is much bolder than anything that we've so far heard from Labour. Now, you may say, well, their manifesto is to come. 1.6 million new homes built. It was 1 million last time in the last Parliament, 1.6 million this time. We're going to cut tax for every single working person in this country by going further on the national insurance. You've seen us do it before. This time we're going to, for somebody who is self-employed, so everyone who's watching this who is self-employed will have their main rate of national insurance abolished, not just cut. So that's something for working people in this country. In my own area of defence, we're going to make this country safer by pledging to make sure that our defence budget rises. Again, not something that's been matched by the leader of the opposition. Indeed, on his front bench, he's got a whole bunch of people who voted against our Trident nuclear deterrent. So clear plans, bold plans, and a much more secure future. I think this is a pretty ambitious programme.
OK. My friend, we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. We really appreciate it. Cheers.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much. Claire, what did you think of what you heard from Grant Shapps?
Well, not really much. I mean, it's as if we've just heard it all before. This is a man who's held more portfolios than he's changed his name for. And they keep going on for the same sound bites. I mean, IR35 is clearly very important to you. It affects a lot of people in this country, and yet he dismissed it. It wasn't something that he wanted to talk about.
Hello.
He said, you know, that's actually what he said.
Yeah.
Oh, we're not here, that's not part of the taxation.
No, but it is part. They talk about increasing people's take-home pay and that sort of thing, and then they'll come knocking on your door and they'll say, oh, yes, but we want more tax from you. And that's the bit they don't talk about.
And also, as a self-employed freelancer, if they're going to do away with national insurance contributions for self-employed people, how's that going to happen? What that knock-on effect is of our personal state pension?
No, I agree.
They just don't seem to think it through.
Let's hear from Scarlett what she thought.
I completely agree with you, but I mean, you also thought, OK, so we're going to have massive tax cuts, and what about public services? What about? I mean, you know, here
we're going to increase defence spending as well.
Increase defence spending.
He's going to lose jobs in defence. He said to us the last time. I mean, I agree with Scarlett from the point of view that we look at the situation of the whole national fabric of the country, and we think something has got to be done about this, and it's not being done. It's in a terrible state. So many things. From the potholes in the roads to the state of the NHS.
Yeah, absolutely. Prisons. I mean,
schools,
you know,
dentists, pharmacists.
Everything. And he thinks that he can bribe us with tax cuts instead of actually making us live in a country. And it really does remind me of '96, where people were saying that this is terrible, and actually what we want is better public services more than tax cuts, because it costs you a fortune.
OK, Claire and Scarlett, thank you both very much indeed. Going to hear from the guys again in 40 minutes' time.
Time now, though, for your weather update with Alex Deakin.
A brighter outlook with Bob Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another chilly one out there this morning. For most of us, though, it's going to be a fine day with lighter winds, feeling just a touch warmer than yesterday. But it's certainly cold out there this morning. We've had clear skies through the night. Does mean quite a few of us waking up to blue skies this morning. A few showers are possible today, parts of Yorkshire down to the East Midlands, East Anglia, one or two over North East Scotland. But most places dry. Quite a bit of cloud by this afternoon, but still some decent spells of sunshine, particularly in the west, and temperatures a little bit higher than yesterday. Still below average for most of us for the time of year, but with lighter winds, a bit more sunshine, it should at least feel a little bit more like June. Through this evening, I think we'll see those temperatures falling off again pretty sharply. Still quite a bit of cloud coming into the northeast. A few scattered showers likely to continue across the Northern Isles. Still some good spells of sunshine across western Scotland. A bit more clouds across Northern Ireland come the afternoon and sticking around into the evening. The odd shower still possible over eastern England, but most of England and Wales will stay dry through this evening, and some good spells of sunshine coming through. But as I said, temperatures dropping pretty speedily under those largely clear skies. It will be a bit of a chilly start again tomorrow morning. Signs of a change though on the way. Behind me the cloud is starting to thicken, the breeze is starting to pick up as well. So through the night it'll turn cloudy across Northern Ireland, western parts of Wales. But elsewhere, generally clear skies and temperatures yet again dipping down into single figures, well down in some rural spots. Again, not far off freezing in some locations. Another bright start though for many central and eastern areas on Thursday, but here comes that change. Clouding over rapidly, rain for Northern Ireland through the morning, that rain trickling into West Wales and southwest England, steadily spreading into parts of southwest Scotland and towards the end of the day into the Midlands. Much of eastern England, northern Scotland staying dry until quite late on. Temperatures ticking up a little bit, but still feeling cool as the wind and rain arrives.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M602 in Greater Manchester is closed in both directions for an investigation between junctions 2 and 3, between Trafford Park at Eccles and the A57 Regent Road roundabout, causing queues. On Merseyside, Balliol Road East in Bootle is closed eastbound off the A565 Derby Road after an oil spill yesterday evening. In Warwickshire, the A444 is closed each way along Weddington Road off the A5 in Nuneaton after an accident. The M1 in Bedfordshire is closed southbound from junction 12, the Toddington and Flitwick turn, down to 11, the A505 Luton and Dunstable turn for an investigation. It's been closed since around midnight, causing roughly 3 miles of queues. I hope to have it back open soon. Northbound has reopened, but still very busy, and there are delays on the A5 through Hockliffe as you divert. And in Surrey, the A320 is closed on Woking Road in Guildford after an accident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We're making this summer funner, with 3 incredible prizes to be won. First, a fantastic £15,000 in tax-free cash that you can spend on anything you like. Next, there's the latest iPhone 15 with a brand new set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at the UK attraction of your choice. The summer fun could be on us. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome to the programme. It's 7 o'clock on Wednesday, the 12th of June.
It is indeed, and you're tuned in to breakfast. We really appreciate that here in GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading for us this morning, it's a final roll of the dice for the Conservatives as they launch their manifesto, promising £17 billion in tax cuts to reward aspiration.
Labour turn an eye to local issues, promising to be the party of drivers and fix 1 million potholes a year.
Renewed questions over the safety of MPs following an attack on Nigel Farage on the campaign trail yesterday.
Lib Dems are promising to get tough on water regulation. They have a new plan for a new watchdog.
And a historic first, as Joe Biden's son Hunter was found guilty on all 3 counts in his federal gun trial case, facing a possible 25 years in jail.
And it's not just Hunter Biden. We'll be debating this morning whether Joe Biden, following a series of new gaffes, is actually fit to be president. Does that man look as if he could run international affairs and the whole of the United States of America?
And in the sport, Manchester United have finally decided on their manager for next season. And after all the reviews and speaking to other managers, they've decided to stick with who they had in the first place and keep Erik ten Hag. Andy Murray played the 999th single match of his career in the first round of the Stuttgart Open and lost. And in athletics, it's all in the dip because last night Daryl Neita missed out on the European Championship 200-metre gold by 1/100th. It's just a dip away.
Morning. Another cold one out there this morning. For most of us, though, a fine day today. The weather is on the change, though, as we look to tomorrow and beyond. Join me later for a full forecast.
So we're sticking on the campaign trail this morning. The Conservatives launched their election manifesto with £17 billion of tax cuts promised by the Prime Minister.
We want to know what you think. Get in touch with us this morning, because there was also a promise to address the housing shortage again by building 1.6 million new homes, which will not happen. £8.3 billion is also set aside to fix potholes and resurface roads. Believe it when I see it. And there'll also be a total ban on smartphones in schools. Sounds good, but will it happen? Then there's immigration. There's a promise to get flights off the ground to Rwanda every month, we hear.
Labour, meanwhile, are set to turn their eye to local issues, pledging that they are the party of drivers, with a promise to fix 1 million potholes.
Right. When they start fixing these potholes, please do let us know when it happens in your area. The Liberal Democrats, well, what are they promising? They're promising to get tough on the water industry, with details to be announced today of a new watchdog to tackle water pollution and sewage dumping. That's long overdue, having that.
And there are renewed questions today about the safety of candidates on the campaign trail after Nigel Farage was hit again, this time by wet cement and rubbish, whilst he was out on the streets yesterday.
OK, so some of the promises, some of the things that happened yesterday, and we'll tell you later what happened to that guy who threw the rubbish from the bin at Nigel Farage yesterday. Here are the key moments.
We will keep cutting taxes in the coming years, meaning that by 2027 we will have halved national insurance to 6%. That is a tax cut, my friends, worth £1,300 to the average worker.
Under Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister, the taxpayer has been losing £1 million every single hour to benefit fraud and error. That is their record. And there are savings to be made. But the idea that the Conservatives' proposals can save £12 billion is pure fiction.
We believe in the long term we need to be back at the heart of Europe. But we're being really clear that we're not going to pretend that's going to be easy. Regrettably, the Conservative Party have so poisoned Britain's relationship with our nearest neighbours, our allies. They've undermined trust.
And I may need to change tactics slightly. But I'm going to make one promise to you and the tens of thousands watching this live, online, and the media. And my promise is this: I will not surrender to the mob. I will not stop campaigning This democratic process must continue.
Well, that was yesterday. Today, the breaking news just in from the Office for National Statistics in the last few moments is that the UK economy recorded no growth in April, which will not be pleasing to the Treasury or the Prime Minister.
Or any of us.
Well, exactly. Let's get some thoughts on all of this. First of all, from the former Conservative Special Advisor and Director of Parliamentary Affairs at the Legarsham Institute, Fred Fossard, and the political commentator, John Oxley. To you, John, first of all, your reaction to this, because a lot of people were suggesting this campaign, the election was announced because the Prime Minister was buoyed by a bit of an uptick in all of the economy figures and the economy was looking good. Well, this is flatlining now. Perhaps he was right to call it before it actually starts to go down?
Perhaps, yes. So the big thing a month ago was that inflation was looking slightly better. And as well, there was some quite positive for the Prime Minister immigration figures. But this, today really gets to the heart of all these things we've been talking about this morning, that if the economy is not growing, it becomes harder and harder to afford the things we want to have, the public services we expect to have, while also keeping taxes low, because, to borrow a term from Liz Truss, the pie isn't getting any bigger and you're just having to split it in, different ways. And so that these figures are coming out, it really adds to the narrative that the Labour Party are going to want to push of, we haven't had enough growth under the Conservatives. They failed to get growth growing. You're seeing that both in your own pay packet and in public services. And, the Labour Party will be saying, give us a crack and maybe we can get out of this stagnation, because it's not just 3 months, it's 14 years really of quite slow growth and that not flowing through to wages in particular.
Well, let's hear from Fred here, who was a former Conservative Special Advisor. So, look, if we were Labour, I'm standing in front of an open goal here. This is, you can just tap the ball in the back of the net. Why aren't they being more bullish about things?
That's a great question. I think, firstly, to John's point about the growth picture, I entirely agree. The manifesto doesn't quite answer some of those issues. I mean, they talk a good game on things like removing some outdated EU laws to make it easier to build things, but they could have done that any time in the last year and a half anyway.
I agree.
So come on, don't take Conservative voters for fools on this one. To your point about Labour, I think they are kind of haunted by losing so many elections on the trot. And they lost elections in 15, 17 and 19, especially 19, because the Conservative Party rightly managed to persuade the public that they would have been terrible on economic growth, terrible on public finances, basically just extremist left-wing. Now they're close to a victory, and a great victory, possibly their greatest victory ever. All they want to do is reduce every opportunity for attack. They're going to be very risk-averse. Keir Starmer knows his path to a majority is through the votes of Middle England.
How are they going to woo Middle England?
Well, I mean, the indication today is that point about drivers, being the party of drivers. One of the Conservatives' attacks at local levels, which actually really worked, has been on low-traffic neighbourhoods and ULEZ. Obviously, ULEZ didn't win the London mayoral, but it was a way of galvanising activism.
But dear God, if I have to endure any 20-mile-an-hour, any more 20-mile-per-hour zones, I have never seen or experienced anything so rubbish.
Look how unpopular that's been in Labour-run Wales, and that's actually been a big weapon that Conservatives have been able to use.
Absolutely key, and I want to get John Oxley's thoughts on this, because the idea of Labour being the party of drivers, it is laughable, not only based on what's happened with the 20-mile-an-hour zones in Wales. You have to look at the Uxbridge by-election and how they were absolutely trounced when all the mood music and all the other by-elections have gone the other way.
Yes, and it is really one of the few arguments, as Fred said, that the Conservatives have really deployed with any electoral success. But, in a lot of places, particularly in a lot of more local contests where they want to fight on local records, there are, these issues about potholes, there are issues about roadworks and building, and that's where the Labour Party can say, well, actually, what we want to do is we want to push some money in. We want to get these things fixed. We want to make these public spaces, these roads, better. And, they can sort of say that without really... It's not a policy that will anger some of them more environmental voters. They won't be having those scraps with the Greens that they're worried about in a few places, because ultimately repairing roads, there's no one who's really against that. So it's quite a clever thing for the Labour Party to lean in on.
OK, so that's what the Labour and Conservative are doing. This whole industry thing about this lack of growth and whatever, basically, the country is rubbish. It's rubbish. Can anybody fix that? I mean, no matter what party you're in, are you in the hands of what's going on in the bigger, wider external world or not?
There's always things we can do domestically. There's always reforms that need to happen. A lot of our discussion is always about tax, but we've always missed the regulatory picture. Yeah. We have pledges to build, over a million homes over the next Parliament from the Conservative Party. You can't do that without radically changing the rules around building homes to make it easier.
Laws and various things like that.
But then they're controversial at a local area. Labour wants to deregulate planning, but also at the same time, they want to make sure anyone can still block new developments in their local area. Right. That's a contradiction which they're going to have to solve if they want to build more stuff. The Conservatives were making some interesting headway with things like doubling the size of Cambridge. That's very cool, that's very exciting. But some of the biggest areas of housing supply issue which are causing problems for the economy are actually in London, and we've seen terrible house building growth in London, and the Conservative and the government has always had powers to sort of turbocharge that with things called development orders, and they were never really used. And actually, if you look at the effect that has on the wider economy, it means people can't move to the jobs they want to do more easily. It means families can't get the homes which are the right size for them. Things like stamp duty, which does raise a considerable amount of money, but stamp duty has ground the entire housing market to a halt. People end up having to, add a little loft extension instead of moving to a new house, and people are often unable to downsize because of the disincentive. These have huge effects throughout the wider economy, and it just remains unreformed.
A final thought, John, on the violence that we saw targeted at Nigel Farage for the second time in this election campaign. He called it an affront to democracy. We absolutely have to all agree and condemn this kind of behaviour. It's just so demeaning, isn't it, of the whole democratic process?
Yes, it is absolutely appalling. We are very fortunate in this country. Unlike many places around the world, we get to choose our politicians, we get to vote them out, we have effective, we have fair elections, and that is where we deal with politicians we like and where we don't like, and anything else is absolutely abhorrent. And I think one of the worst things we're seeing is if this isn't clamped down on and it's not dealt with severely, it's going to put people off coming into politics, but also it becomes one of those things where if you want your 15 minutes of fame, this is a thing you can go and do. And I think we really need to show that in these instances and anywhere else where it happens to any other politicians, this cannot be tolerated. Yeah. This is very serious.
Fred, I think that there is now this attitude amongst people that it's acceptable. You saw the girl last week with her banana milkshake and this guy here. And it really is quite threatening. But nobody seems to be being put off about it, which strikes me then that the penalties imposed on these people mustn't be strong enough.
I think I agree. This is a very bad sign for all of society. It's not just a tax on politicians, which is extraordinary. It's the sort of thing that a rich nation like Britain, that's been a democracy, one of the oldest democracies in the world, should never see. But also look at the vandalism happening in art galleries, led by Animal Rising or Just Stop Oil. These art galleries, worth remembering, we all have to go through security to get into them nowadays. There are scanners at the National Gallery, there are scanners at the British Museum, yet these protesters still manage to get their stuff in. It's a weird world where people that want to break the law seem to be able to do it at will, and then the law-abiding majority are always being sort of hemmed in and told what to do. It just doesn't work, and it can only lead to... It will go down a very, very bad route if we're not careful.
Well, if it was America, they don't seem to attack politicians in America the same way. That's because they'd be shot dead, wouldn't they, if they tried something?
Well, perhaps. Although it was worth remembering that around a decade ago there were actual congressmen, I think, shot while they were playing a baseball game.
Yeah, don't forget JFK as well.
That's the thing. So there's that. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I wouldn't. There's a thing of political violence in America, which as well, which even though they might have a more aggressive law enforcement, doesn't mean that it's better over there by default.
Well, we've got Brendan Cox, the widow. I always get this muddled up. Widower of Jo Cox, who was violently murdered while she was carrying out her work as an MP. Talking a little bit about how we really need to make sure we stand up against violence to candidates and MPs. That's just after 8 o'clock. But for now, we say thank you to John Oxley, political commentator, and Fred de Fossard. And we'll just take this opportunity to point out that Fred works for the Legatum Institute. They're owned by the Legatum Group, who is also one of the lead investors in GB News.
Right, the time now, 7:15. A parade of cadets, veterans and armed forces, serving armed forces members have honoured Britain's Second World War heroes by marching through Nottingham.
Yes, it's a traditional drumhead service and held at the city's War Memorial, commemorating the events of the 80-year anniversary. Will Hollis has the story.
The men and women that served to protect Britain. In Nottingham, they remember those who came before. By the banks of the River Trent, a service at the city's War Memorial marking the anniversary of D-Day. Colonel James Gunn was training then. The 98-year-old remembers the perilous position Britain was in.
The country was absolutely right up against it. We were a single country. We had no allies whatever except the Empire. Now, nowadays, I'm not allowed to talk nicely about the Empire, but without that, we would have been in real trouble.
James was lucky. He was commissioned with the British Indian Army as the war ended. But so many never came home. By now, 80 years ago, the Battle of Normandy was raging, with the number of Brits killed growing.
Frederick William Clark, Army, New Basefield.
A roll of honour, the men from Nottinghamshire who died on D-Day. The average age was 23. More than 20,000 allies under British command were killed in Normandy. Decades later, their sacrifice honoured not just by the armed forces, but the public too.
A lot of people, men laid down and women laid down their lives for how we could live today.
We lived in peace and we owe it to our armed forces.
I just get really upset, and my daughter's a Lord Lieutenant Cadet and I want my children to remember.
The Lord Lieutenant of Nottinghamshire, Veronica Pickering, says communities should connect with the armed forces.
This is a way of building bridges and building up family and community strength.
For 18-year-old cadet Daniel Hanlon, the parade is a privilege.
It's certainly an honour to have been selected for this position, and as such I get to come out here and do things like this, which are always fun and important for showing remembrance for the people who've come before us, the people we've lost.
They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. We will remember them. Will Hollis, GB News in Nottingham.
And a look at some other stories that we've got for you this morning. Returning to that breaking news that we just delivered to you, the economy in this country has recorded no growth in April. This is from the Office for National Statistics. The Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves has responded by saying Rishi Sunak claims we have turned a corner, but the economy has stalled and there is no growth. These figures expose the damage done after 14 years, she says, of Conservative chaos.
To the United States, and President Joe Biden's son Hunter has been convicted of lying about his drug use to illegally buy a gun. A jury found the 54-year-old guilty on all 3 counts against him, making him the first child of a sitting president to be convicted of a crime. The president released a statement accepting the outcome of the trial and saying, "I am the president, but I am also a dad. Jill and I love our son, and we are so proud of the man he is today."
The latest survey of British social attitudes has revealed a record number of people don't trust the government. According to the survey, 45% people almost never believe governments of any party are fully focused on challenges facing the country. A record 58% also said they almost never trust politicians of any party to tell the truth. That's up by 19 points since 2020.
Mallorca's international airport was grounded yesterday due to flooding caused by heavy rain. Flights were unable to take off or land. According to the Mallorcan Daily Bulletin, eyewitnesses described the flooding as chaotic, and a local weather station recorded nearly 5 centimetres of water in an hour. dear.
No, dear, but everything's not bad. I'm a great fan of Tunnocks wafers and marshmallows and things like that. Now, Tunnocks, based in Scotland, of course, say they will not shrink the size of their products. Now, I spent a weekend with various products. Mars bars, Turkish delights, Maltesers, box of Maltesers, all smaller. All smaller. You get a box of Maltesers now, and you used to be able to put your hand into it, you know, like that.
Lose your hand.
But now you put your hand in, it goes. The box, you know what I mean? Like the box, there's nothing to the box.
It's the same price.
It might be more. I don't know. I don't even know. But the lovely thing about Tunnocks, it would be the same today than if you bought it 100 years ago. They would be the same. The caramel wafers or the marshmallows or, you know, whatever they do. That is a nice thing. You know, it's nice when you arrive at Heathrow. There's big Tunnocks adverts everywhere. I always think that's quite good. It's like Northern Ireland, you arrive and there are Tato Crisp adverts everywhere. So representing the local product, what the country's famous for, and it just gets the message out there to visitors, people who come and say, oh, what's that? I should buy that. That's the in thing to have.
There you go, top tip. I haven't spotted that.
Anything that is just, everything has shrunk. Every blooming thing has shrunk and is probably more expensive as a result. What I don't know, though, is by how much Tunnocks have put their prices up.
Yeah, let's do some research and report back.
Yes.
Let's see what the weather's going to be up to. You saw what it's like in Mallorca. If you've just come back from there, let us know if you're affected by that story. It's a big, popular destination for Brits, but the weather, not much better here. It's been chilly the last few days. Here's Alex Deakin with your forecast.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another chilly one out there this morning. For most of us, though, it's going to be a fine day with lighter winds, feeling just a touch warmer than yesterday. But it's certainly cold out there this morning. We've had clear skies through the night. Does mean quite a few of us waking up to blue skies this morning. A few showers are possible today across parts of Yorkshire, down to the East Midlands, East Anglia, one or two over North East Scotland. But most places dry. Quite a bit of cloud by this afternoon, but still some decent spells of sunshine, particularly in the west. And temperatures a little bit higher than yesterday. Still below average for most of us for the time of year, but with lighter winds, a bit more sunshine, it should at least feel a little bit more like June. Through this evening, I think we'll see those temperatures falling off again pretty sharply. Still quite a bit of cloud coming into the northeast. A few scattered showers likely to continue across the Northern Isles. Still some good spells of sunshine across western Scotland. A bit more clouds across Northern Ireland come the afternoon and sticking around into the evening. The odd shower still possible over eastern England, but most of England and Wales will stay dry through this evening and some good spells of sunshine coming through. But as I said, temperatures dropping pretty speedily under those largely clear skies. It will be a bit of a chilly start again tomorrow morning. Signs of a change though on the way. Behind me the cloud is starting to thicken, the breeze is starting to pick up as well. So through the night it'll turn cloudy across Northern Ireland, western parts of Wales. But elsewhere generally clear skies and temperatures yet again dipping down into single figures, well down in some rural spots. Again, not far off freezing in some locations. Another bright start though for many central and eastern areas on Thursday, but here comes that change. Clouding over rapidly, rain for Northern Ireland through the morning. That rain trickling into West Wales and southwest England, steadily spreading into parts of southwest Scotland and towards the end of the day into the Midlands. Much of eastern England, northern Scotland staying dry until quite late on. Temperatures ticking up a little bit, but still feeling cool as the wind and rain arrives.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Thanks for all your reactions this morning. Alan says, I cannot get an NHS dentist, cannot get any medication due to cutbacks. Roads are so bad you need a tank to drive on them these days. Pamela says, didn't we get promised the potholes we were repaired with the money available from cancelling the northern section of the HS2? Yes, we were. Why does it take a general election to get potholes filled in and more houses? I think it's all talk as usual. I'm with you, Gary. Lee says there's no growth because no one wants to work. Those that do want to work part-time or from home were spoilt by COVID, staying at home and being paid 80%.
And breaking news in as well, Eamonn. Tunnock's tea cake maker profit plunges despite price hike.
They still make a profit?
No.
What? Give me that again.
Plunges despite the price hike. Profits have plunged, but they've upped the price, but they've kept the product the same. I suspect if profits have plunged, they may have to change their product.
Well, we'll all be sorrier if we lose a product like Tunnock's caramel wafers and things like that. So, on your head be it. Philippa, we're talking about freelancers and how they have this IR35 tax brought about by George Osborne, and then he sloped off as he stole money out of people's pockets. So it's fine to be able to say to people, we've been agreeing you're freelance, but actually we got that wrong, we're going to change that. Don't think anybody's going to any issue with that. It's then going to someone and say, we want 8 years back tax and national insurance from you from what way you've been classified before, when you haven't thought you've been doing anything wrong. Philippa says, well done, Eamonn, for telling Grant Shapps about IR35, which he was sort of dismissing, denying, didn't really want to talk about, but they don't. But it will affect you. If you are a taxi driver, if you are a gardener, if you are a painter and decorator, it's all right to put people like me in the newspapers because that gets everybody a headline that goes, oh yeah, he'll be dodging his tax, he will be. Well, then they'll come and they'll knock on your door and they'll tell you exactly the same. The Tory party should be about small businesses like us freelancers, says Philippa. I agree with that. When I hear the Conservative Party talk about, we're the party of small business, tell us if you're a small business, how they're helping you.
Well, we're going to help you. It's time for our giveaway, and we would like to say a massive congratulations, first of all, to John from West Yorkshire. He won £20,000. Wouldn't that be nice?
Well done,
here's the moment that we made that call to tell him the good news.
So, John, are you sitting down?
I'm on the bench in the garden.
I'm probably going to make your day. You've won £20,000.
Yes, you see, that is absolutely fantastic.
Over the moon.
Yes, that is fantastic. You know, bearing in mind that when you're a pensioner, you're sort of sometimes cash poor, and so we really have had to actually tighten our belts. So actually this will mean that, I won't say we'll go on holiday, this keeps on banging on about going on holiday.
A little holiday.
But a little holiday maybe, I think, possibly, yes, why not? Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much.
Not indeed.
Thank you, John. Yeah. And you could get a call like that as well. You could be next, and this is your chance to win £15,000 in cash and a lot of summer extras. Here are the details.
We're making this summer funner with 3 incredible prizes to be won. First, a fantastic £15,000 in tax-free cash that you can spend on anything you like. Next, there's the latest iPhone 15 with a brand new set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at the UK attraction of your choice. The summer fun could be on us. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck. It could be you. It could be another job.
And it could be nice.
And it could be lovely. Wouldn't that be great?
Still to come, another gaffe from Joe Biden, raising questions on whether he is fit.
What's the matter? It looks like he's been electrocuted.
He just looks as if he's somewhere else, and I really feel sorry for the man.
He looks like he's in Madame Tussauds.
But has he got no one around him?
Oh, he's got his VP there.
Well,
somebody.
OK, what do you think? We're going to be debating that next. Joe for president or not?
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that. Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you. This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel. Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Now, it's happened again. Joe Biden has been seen appearing frozen to the spot whilst everyone around him is dancing and enjoying themselves. This was at a Juneteenth event at the White House yesterday. Look at that.
Well, that raises some serious questions about the suitability or the capabilities of the 81-year-old president. Is he fit? Does he look fit to be able to run the country?
Well, is it time to retire, Sleepy Joe, or was he just enjoying the moment? Let's ask the chair of the Republicans overseas, Greg Swenson, and the California Democratic campaign advisor, Bob Mulholland. Good morning to you both. I think I'll come to you first, Bob. You know, and look, I don't like to be ageist. I don't want to bash someone because they're in their 80s, but I feel genuine concern looking at that video. If he was my father or my grandfather, I would be thinking someone needs to look after him and, dare I say, fetch him his slippers because he doesn't appear to be in the room, as it were. What was your assessment?
Enjoying the entertainment, and you can take videos of Trump and say the same thing. I mean, there's very little difference between, there's a lot of difference between a 2 and a 5-year-old. There's very little difference between an 81 and a 78-year-old. We'll win this race. Sure, the American people say, oh, I wish both of these were younger candidates. Just like in the UK, I'm sure some of the people in the UK say, oh, I wish we had different leaders running these. That's normal. Look at it. It's going to be a tough race.
Bob, come off it, Bob. There's nothing normal about that man at the moment. His health's not normal. His mental capabilities don't seem normal. And as Isabel said, if he was related to any of us, we would be deeply concerned. Surely, you know, a blind man on a galloping horse can see he's not in the room.
Several weeks ago, Trump couldn't remember his wife's name, and people said the same thing about him. And lots of times, Trump looks at the mic and starts talking about things.
We can't hear you, Bob. Just trying to get some boosting on what you're saying here so we can hear you properly.
Yeah. I said that Trump a few weeks ago couldn't even mention his, forgot to mention his wife's name. And there's plenty of times Trump looks at the mic and says, "Where am I?" Or he has that look.
Do you know what, Bob? Nobody's disagreeing with that. I mean, you've got two candidates here that you think, is that the best you can have to represent the biggest, most powerful country in the world?
Yes, that is it. These are the two nominees next month and August. These are the two nominees, period. So get on with it.
OK, we need to get over it, says Bob. Let's bring in Greg Swenson, because for me, this is everything that's wrong with politics, that people will tell you black is white, and it is apparent to everybody that this person is not suitable to be leader of the free world. Is there an element of dishonesty in all of this, do you think, Greg Swenson?
Yeah, I really do. And I think the Democrats and much of the media on the left is trying to gaslight Americans. And it's not working, by the way. 86% of Americans think that Joe Biden is too old. Back in 2008, people thought
it's not
John
that
McCain...
he's too old, my friend. He's too sick.
Well, there's the cognitive challenges as well. I mean, that's, to me, much more important than age. You know, in 2008, 20% of Americans thought John McCain was too old. In 96, 27% thought Bob Dole was too old. 86% think Biden is too old. 62% think he will die in office. This is not a good moment. Yes, I agree with Bob. It's the election that, you know, the winner will be whoever you dislike less. And so that's not a good moment for politics. But, you know, Biden's approval's at 37% right now. He is in bad shape. And I think it's dishonest to try to make the argument that everything's great with Joe Biden. The same people that are trying to gaslight Americans will be the ones that orchestrate his removal if he were to win on November 5th.
And Bob, do you hear what I'm saying when I feel frustrated that any question I ask you about President Biden just is battered back, saying, we could say the same about Trump. I'm not trying to make a partisan point. I'm not in America. I can't vote. You know, whoever is the leader has nothing to do with me. All I'm trying to say objectively, and it's what people find so frustrating about politicians, is they cannot be honest. Do you not have any concern looking at that picture? And if President Biden was to win, come November, what is it, the 7th, the 5th? You know, come the 6th, if he were to be back in the White House, would he seriously be sitting in office for the next few years, or would there be a plan to basically replace him instantly? There's a lack of honesty, I think. Well, prove me wrong.
Just to remind you, the polls that are done every week, every day, show that it's a statistical dead heat. So despite what the American people say, this or that about each of these candidates, when it comes down to, OK, who are you going to vote for? Well, it's dead heat. And in some of the swing states... That wasn't my
question, though. My question wasn't about who's going to win, who's going to vote. It's almost irrelevant. I'm asking, do you have any concern yourself looking at that? No. I find that extraordinarily hard to believe.
Why would you? I mean, ask the Tory voters in the UK. Would some of them have concerns? Yeah, but not me. Not me for Biden. I know the man. I've known him since the 70s. He's still sharp as ever.
He certainly does not look like the Joe Biden that used to stand alongside President Obama.
Well, look at Obama. He's got nothing but grey hair or no hair.
OK.
We're all age.
Well, we're not getting anywhere with this. Greg, a final thought from you in relation to his son, Hunter Biden. Do you think that could be attributed to perhaps his off behaviour yesterday? It would have been, as he described it, a body blow.
I'm not even sure you'd be aware what happened to his son.
That's a good point, Eamonn.
Yesterday, yeah.
I think it surely has been a distraction. And I don't think you could argue that Joe Biden, you know, is a supporter of his son, obviously. And I think this must have been difficult for President Biden. I thought he handled it well. At least, I'm not sure he wrote that statement.
He or someone who wrote his statement handled it well.
I'm sure whoever wrote the statement was sensitive about it. I think this helps the Democrats in many ways because there might be some sympathy for President Biden.
Greg, we'll not hear this from Bob, who's very loyal there in his defence, but I think what both Isabel and I are saying is that he does not look a well man. I've known people who have had mental disorders, Alzheimer's, dementia, whatever, and there's a distance that they have in the room. I could impersonate how they stand, how they look. And that's what I see when I look at President Biden. He goes to sit down, but there's no chair for him. He doesn't know what to do next. He doesn't know whose hand to shake. There's too many, what we would term gaffes going on. And as Isabel said, a man who's not in the room sort of thing. And it really amazes me that people don't say he's obviously sick and we need to gently wind him down from this situation and put someone else in there.
Yeah, it's elder abuse in many ways. And they were able to bury this in 2020 during the campaign because it was COVID and they could say he can't leave the house.
That was probably true, to be fair.
You know, his wife did a good job of burying those obvious facts, but I don't think they can do that this time around. That's why those polls, as I said, you know, with 86% saying he's too old, this is unprecedented polling data. So I think that it's quite obvious. I do think that they need him as the placeholder. They probably have some regrets for not talking him out of running, but there's really no mechanism to remove him at this point. So, but the cognitive challenges are so obvious. It's sad to see because many of us have had parents and grandparents who've gone through this, and so it is sad to see. But to run him, to you know, have him as the nominee, I think is really a big mistake.
Gentlemen, we've got to leave it there. Greg, appreciate what you had to say. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for joining
us. And Bob Mulholland here as well in studio. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Coming up, which bald Premier League manager is staying on for an extra season? I don't know
What's that got to do?
I don't know. It's very baldest, that statement. But anyway, there's a lot of bald. I mean, Pep is bald. Eric Ten Hag is bald. I don't know, there's a good few of them that are bald, but anyway, sport next.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In County Durham, the A167 is blocked each way by an accident off Central Avenue at Newton Aycliffe, causing queues each way. On Merseyside, Balliol Road East in Bootle remains closed eastbound off the A565 Derby Road after an oil spill yesterday evening. There are queues as you divert. Now in Warwickshire, the A444 is closed each way along Weddington Road off the A5 in Nuneaton after an accident. The M1 in Bedfordshire has been closed southbound again from junction 12, the Toddington and Flitwick turn, to 11, the A505 Luton and Dunstable turn after an investigation. Queues are halfway back to junction 13 at Bedford, and there are long delays too on the A5 each way towards Hotcliffe as you divert. And in Kent, the A249 is partly blocked southbound off junction 5 of the M2 at Sittingbourne, causing queues. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes and Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Time to go through all the latest sports news now, and we're joined by Paul Coit to bring us right up to date.
Right. So who's the bald manager?
Who could it possibly be?
Yeah.
My, that's a real tricky one. I can't think of anybody else. It's Eric Ten Hag, of course.
Yeah.
So Manchester United
speaking to everybody else, it seems that he's going to go, but Erik ten Hag's going to stick around at Manchester.
It makes sense. Makes sense.
I think at the end of the day, it does make sense. Maybe that was the plan all along. Maybe he's gone on holiday not worrying. Maybe they haven't thought about changing.
They'd planned to biff him. They'd absolutely planned to biff him. And then superb display. Yeah. New players were available from injury. Suddenly it looked like, well, if he had a fully strengthened team, what could he do with it?
I think Jim Radcliffe is one tough boss to work for, because it's right the way across the board. He's looked at everything. Maybe it's the right thing, maybe it isn't, but he doesn't suffer fools, does he? And it's like, OK...
No, he doesn't. And
my way or the highway.
Let's bear in mind, they're getting rid of something like 25% of staff.
Yeah.
As well. So people on, low wages that are... Not talking about the money the players and things get here, but...
Things are so bad with him, he's even cutting down on the players. There's only going to be 8 players that are going to play in the side. That's what he's going to do. He's going to do it right the way across the board. You don't mess with Jim Radcliffe,
Well, if the team comes back and is a great strength and start winning things again, no one's going to complain.
Of course they're not. Well, we'll see. October, November, always the time. So we'll see how things start. By the way, the new fixtures are out next Tuesday.
Gosh, that's
so next
early,
week,
isn't it?
Yeah, so already you start planning.
OK.
Athletics last night. Always love the athletics. It's the European Championship. So, I mean, the thing is, they're doing it on, like, the red button on the BBC. You can't even find it to watch it. Eventually, you can. But it's hard to find.
Where did you find it? Where is it?
Oh, I had to go on the iPlayer and then press this and search for this. So it's there somewhere, but it takes probably the length of an 800-metre race to actually find the damn thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, Daryl Neater was distraught yesterday. There she is. Now, she celebrates. See, she looks happy, but she wasn't happy because she got silver. That's the dip. It's all on the dip. 200 metres, she came second, so she missed out on gold by 1/100th of a second, and she does play... Look, there's the dip. It's got more of a lean forward. So there's the woman on the right who wins. If only she'd leaned forward just a little bit more, could have been the goal. Dina Asher-Smith won the 100 metres, but our sprinters are very good. So going forward into the Olympics, that looks good. 22-year-old Megan Keith won bronze in the 10,000 metre. Everybody thought Alicia McColgan was going to do well there, but she's been injured for a while. She pulled out after about 6,000 metres. At the start, they couldn't fire the gun. So I'm watching this. They're going, right, everybody, then the gun goes off. They go, no, bring back because we didn't say on your marks. Get back, right, on your marks, set. They're about to run 10,000 metres, pull the trigger, nothing happens.
Yeah.
This is all in Rome. And then eventually they got the race away. So a good result.
And as you quite rightly say, if you hear some of these names of these athletes and you think, who is this? You'll know who they are come the summer and the Olympics.
See, it's the tricky thing, isn't it, for an athlete? You're really well known for a little while around the Olympic Games. All the fuss will be made. And then it's always the trickiest time for any athlete is after the Olympic Games, because that's what they train for, another 4 years. Quick word on Andy Murray. Andy Murray is now outside the top 100 because he lost in the Stuttgart Open yesterday. So he's slipping and sliding. He's gone from 97th to 128th in the world. Do you know who's 129?
No.
Have a look. This is the 129th in the world. So we've gone to 97, 128. There's 129. Oh, we're not... No, we're actually going to see Andy. I was hoping we were going to see the picture of the person who is the 129th, who is...
You better tell us.
Yes, let me see that picture. It's just a picture of the 129th. It looks just a while. You know the thing about comedy, it's all in the timing, but when you have to wait about 5 minutes for the damn picture, then it doesn't really quite work so well.
that strap they put up there, what does that say?
I'm grateful for it at this time in the morning.
What does that say? Andy, you're out. Yeah. Oh, dear. Thank you.
I'm hoping that young man is going to work his way up the rankings.
Do you know what? The awful thing is, that's like yesterday.
Yeah.
That's like yesterday, and just time goes... so quickly, whatever. Paul, thank you very much indeed. We'll take a break, and still to come, we're looking at what's making the news. We're talking about those big stories next.
Yes, see you in a moment.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
We'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
As he kissed her goodbye with...
Ian Phoenix was in charge of a counter-terrorism group dedicated to bringing peace to Northern Ireland. He was a husband and a father.
He was a real Irishman. He had the twinkly Irish eyes. He enjoyed a good joke. He liked a good glass of wine.
Susan Phoenix first heard of the accident that killed her husband on her car radio.
I was just driving along going, no, no, no. I can still see it. I can still feel it, even 30 years on.
On the 2nd of June 1994, the Chinook helicopter that was taking them to a peace conference crashed into the side of a mountain on the Mull of Kintyre, killing 4 crew and 25 of the country's top counter-terrorism experts. At a board of inquiry, the Ministry of Defence concluded there was no doubt whatsoever the accident had been caused by the gross negligence of the 2 pilots, Flight Lieutenants Richard Cook and Jonathan Tapper. But there was doubt. Plenty of it. There were no eyewitnesses on that foggy night, no flight data recorder, no voice recorder. It took until 2011 for the Ministry of Defence to admit they had not a shred of evidence. At the time of the crash, systematic errors in the software that controlled the engines had been reported. The MOD had seen its safety budget slashed in the run-up to the accident. In a statement, the Ministry of Defence told GB News, in 2010, the Mull of Kintyre independent review was carried out and the findings were fully accepted. The review did not find new evidence to suggest mechanical failure, and no safety issues with the Chinook Mark II were raised in the report. This weekend, the families have formed the Chinook Justice Campaign. But justice may never come.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, let's get into the papers now. Claire Muldoon and Scarlett Maguire. And, guys, we want to talk about the attack on Nigel Farage, because it was an attack, and it seems to be becoming very acceptable. There he was last week or the week before, the woman who threw the banana milkshake around him. And then this guy, you know, felt he could put his hand in a bin and fire bricks or goodness knows what at him. Scarlett, what do you think?
Well, look, it's really serious stuff, because what we have to remember is that 2 MPs have been killed in the last few years. And although Nigel Farage is not one of my favourite people, I mean, what it must be like for him thinking, you know, is this just a milkshake, or is this going to be more?
Awful?
I know, no, it's. I mean, and actually, it absolutely has to be stopped. And anybody who does it does need to be done. But can I say that I was accosted by a Reform person last night outside Leicester
when you say
Square.
accosted, what do you mean by accosted?
So my companion, he said, "Oh, will you vote Reform?" And my companion said no. And so he said, "Well, I hope migrants take over your house." And then he looked at me and he said, "I know who you are." Obviously, for GB News, he said, "You're a liberal lefty." Female dog, he used the word, and then he said, "And I hope the migrants rape you."
Oh my goodness, Scarlett, I am so sorry. I know. And obviously, we haven't got any chance to get response.
No, I'm
from
not
Reform.
saying. I'm not
But
blaming.
I mean,
can I say I am not blaming Nigel Farage? But can I say that sort of public discourse
1,000%.
is awful.
There's no place for it. And Farage himself said it was an affront to democracy to see things thrown at him, and
he's
that's
right.
an affront to
And he's
democracy
right.
as well.
Absolutely.
The other thing is that's actually putting off public hustings for Starmer and Sunak as well, and they really do need to get out here to listen to us, the public, the electorate, because what we're hearing from them is nothing. It's bluster. It's things that they just. It's almost as if they're saying it behind a screen. and in which case it won't happen.
Well, people have
they're
got so
safe.
used to saying horrendous things behind a screen, whether it's personal comments on your say about people, whether it's personal comments on Twitter, and then it spills into normal life. They think it's totally acceptable to speak like that. I thought we were supposed to be British. I thought we were supposed to be stiff upper lip and polite.
Absolutely. I mean, it was really shocking.
Oh, it really is. And
well, it's the minority. Let's remember that's not how most people behave.
This lad, Hunter Biden, was a crack cocaine addict, and he bought a gun, and yesterday he was found guilty of illegally buying that gun and owning it. Because he was addicted to drugs at the time that he bought it. Why is this such a big deal? Sorry, I'm realising, I understand what he's done is wrong, but why, if his dad wasn't president, would they really be pursuing this?
The thing I don't understand as well is these are allegations which have now been found in court, served by the jury, in 2018.
Yeah.
Pretty historic.
Yeah.
Why in 2024?
Well, we know why.
6
Well,
years
he's a
after
changed
the
man.
event.
He's reformed.
54-year-old man now, and I think the spin on it from his dad's publicist, because I don't think Joe Biden wrote that statement, which was quite clear, said, like many ordinary Americans, I have an addict for a son. I'm paraphrasing here. And this is the good thing that can happen to it. There is light at the end of the tunnel. But these charges are pretty horrific, and he was found guilty of them. But the public, whereas Trump is coming out saying, it's lies, it's all damn lies, it was a kangaroo court, he's taking full accountability and full responsibility.
Well, I hate to say for him, Hunter Biden's going to face another 2 or 3 appearances in court for various other things. I don't know how the man sustains the pressure in his late 50s for all of this, but it's pretty tough times for him.
Well, the allegations that he was being found guilty of could stand a 25-year sentence. Now, no one thinks he's going to do those 25 years.
In other societies, he could get a medal or praise for being reformed.
Well, exactly. And that's the other spin on it, What way do we go? The fact is he's now a felon, like Trump. What is going to happen with his sentencing, what's going to happen for the rest of his recovery. It's just going on. And it shows you how easy it is as well to get guns in America.
Claire, got to leave it there. Scarlett, thank you very much indeed. Speak to the guys again in 40 minutes' time. And we'll see you right after this break.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On Merseyside, Balliol Road East is closed eastbound from the A565 Derby Road to Breeze Hill in Bootle after an oil spill yesterday evening. In Warwickshire, the A444 is closed each way after an accident on Weddington Road off the A5. In Nuneaton, on the M42 in Warwickshire, there are southbound delays taking half an hour from junction 8 for the M6 to 6 for the A45. In Suffolk, the A14 is partly blocked eastbound by an accident on the Orwell Bridge at Ipswich, causing roughly 2 miles of queues. On the M1 in Bedfordshire, that's closed southbound from junction 12, the Toddington and Flitwick turn down to 11, the A505 Luton and Dunstable turn. Queues are over halfway back to junction 13 at Bedford, with long delays too on the A5 through Hotcliffe as you divert. And on the M26 in Kent, there are westbound queues getting onto the M25 because of roadworks. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's our summer spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash. £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer. Plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, 8 o'clock, Wednesday, the 12th of June. Welcome to Breakfast with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
And leading the news this hour, the final roll of the dice for the Conservatives as they launch their manifesto. They promise £17 billion in tax cuts to reward what they say is aspiration.
Labour turn an eye to local issues, promising to be the party of drivers, and they pledge to fix 1 million potholes a year.
Renewed questions over the safety of MPs following an attack on Nigel Farage on the campaign trail yesterday. What did you think of that? We'll be speaking to Brendan Cox. Brendan is the widower of the murdered MP Joe Cox. Speaking to Brendan very shortly.
And the Lib Dems are promising to get tough on water regulation with a plan for a new watchdog.
An historic first as Joe Biden's son Hunter is found guilty in all 3 counts of his federal gun trial case, facing a possible 25 years in prison.
And in the sport this morning, Manchester United have finally decided on their manager for the next season. And after all the reviews and speaking to other managers, they've decided to stick with who they had in the first place and keep Erik ten Hag. Gareth Southgate says it's now or never when it comes to him and winning a trophy with England. And the finest hot dog eater in the world is banned from the biggest hot dog eating competition in the world on the 4th of July. We're busy that day anyway, because it's worse the day before the Euros quarter-finals.
Morning. Another cold one out there this morning. For most of us, though, a fine day today. The weather is on the change, though, as we look to tomorrow and beyond. Join me later for a full forecast.
So to the campaign trail. Conservatives have launched their election manifesto with £17 billion of tax cuts promised by the Prime Minister.
There was also a promise to address the housing shortage by building 1.6 million new homes, which will never happen. £8.3 billion is also set aside to fix potholes and resurface roads, which will never happen. And there's also a total ban on smartphones in schools, which, again, will never happen. So why do we believe it all?
On immigration, there's a promise to get flights off the ground to Rwanda every month. Meanwhile, Labour are set to turn their eye to local issues, pledging that they're the party of drivers, with promises to fix 1 million potholes. OK. The Liberal Democrats, what about them? Well, they're promising to get tough on the water industry, with details to be announced today of a new watchdog to tackle water pollution and sewage dumping. Well, throughout the election, we've been pledging to hear from people right across the country of all political persuasions about the issues that matter to them. And today, we meet David Lee. David is from Mansfield, and if you've ever been to Mansfield, some real good characters there, and David is one of them.
I'm David Lee, I'm 45 from Mansfield. The biggest issue for me is basically putting money back into people's pockets. Shops are closing, people are out of jobs, and the regeneration of a place like this is really needed. I'm a business owner, I've got a small shoe repair shop. I've got to put my prices up because my costs everywhere have gone up. So to put money back into people's pockets, lower taxes, and get more shops open. That's what I want to see in a place like this. I think people around here feel disillusioned with politics, with government. They talk about all this money that this town's being given to level up, and our money is going to be given to the places in the north to level up. But what levelling up has happened in Mansfield? This marketplace, it used to be full of stalls. Now, as you look at it, there's an handful of stalls. Mansfield has always been Labour. You put a red ribbon on a donkey round here and it would have got in. But then we come to 2017 and it switched allegiances and it went Conservative. And I think a big reason for that was obviously Brexit. In the past, I voted for Labour, for Conservative, even for UKIP. But at the moment, I'm on the fence of which way I'm going to vote. And I'm not going to look at Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer on which one of those I'm going to vote for, or even the other parties. I'm going to look at what the politicians say they're going to do for my town, Mansfield.
OK, David making his position clear. Let us know what you think about that. Yesterday, Nigel Farage was out in the campaign trail for the Reform Party, and this is what happened to him. So some bloke in a red tunic starts chucking things that he's picking out of a bin. Watch him. He goes to this bin, and then he gets this stuff and fires it at Nigel Farage. Security guards on hand there to do what they did, but is it enough? Joining us this morning, a man who has experience much worse than that, what we saw yesterday. He is from Survivors Against Terror, and he is Brendan Cox, who sadly lost his wife, Jo, to a gun attack. Brendan, what do you think when you look at something like this, you know, years after what happened to Jo, and still physical attacks are going on?
Yeah, I think it's deeply depressing that people think that you can resolve political disagreements with intimidation, with violence, and you know, some people think these things are a joke. The throwing of the milkshakes, the throwing of eggs, the throwing of paper cups. But these things aren't, because what they do is that they create a poisonous culture in our democracy. They make people who are willing to go further than that, not just throw things, perhaps throw a punch, perhaps worse than that, more likely to do that. So you can disagree vehemently with people like Farage, which I certainly do, but we have a responsibility to uphold the right of candidates, no matter their views, their right to campaign in a way and speak to the public in a way that they're unable to get their point across. We have to let the ballot box do the talking, and not intimidation, and certainly not violence.
Obviously, this must be triggering for you in light of what happened to Jo and obviously the mother of your children. Do you think that it puts people off wanting to join politics, the fact that, you know, in not just her case, in Sir David Amos's case as well, they paid for their jobs with their lives. You know, I know that Jo's sister stepped into her shoes and became the MP in her constituency, but there must be other people, ordinary people, who care about society, want to make a difference and think, frankly, I just don't want to put my family or myself in harm's way to do that job.
I think that's definitely true. I mean, I think there were probably two effects of what happened to Jo. One, it would certainly have scared a lot of people, and I think not just what happened to Jo, not just what happened to David Amos, but also the sort of day-to-day intimidation, the vitriol, the threat, both sort of explicit and implicit, to members of Parliament, to councillors as well, is something which is a real problem and definitely puts people off. I also think that in Jo's case, people also related to her, and I think there were a lot of people, I've spoken to lots of them, who were inspired into politics because of her and because of her example. So I think it cuts both ways. But the fundamental thing here is that we have to defend our democracy. We have to make sure that people are able to go out on the campaign trail, no matter their views, that we can respond to their views at the ballot box, and that's what we should do this election.
But I think, Brendan, you know, the fact, like, take Nigel Farage, almost everywhere he goes now, there's going to be some sort of verbal or physical attack on him. And I would say those are from people who don't fear the consequences. So the consequences mustn't be tough enough.
I'm sure that's partly the case. I mean, I think we need to draw a line and be careful here that protest is as legitimate as standing for election. So people protesting over things and indeed shouting and indeed heckling is part and parcel of our politics. We mustn't end up a sort of snowflake generation where people can't shout they disagree with you. But you have to draw a line where it comes to intimidation and where it comes to violence and where it comes to harassment. And that's the line we need to draw. I also think there's a responsibility of parties, particularly Farage's party, but others as well, to make sure that they aren't creating a climate where other people feel unsafe. You've seen so many examples of Reform candidates who have been on record calling people from ethnic minorities baboons, saying that we should have not fought Hitler, saying that women are the sponging gender. The Barnsley North candidate just very recently compared black people to savages. So that is also very important because that creates a hostile climate to minorities in our country, and that is also unacceptable.
Well, yes, I accept what you're saying in terms of we need to be careful what we say, but you could probably level that at all the parties. I'm thinking about a high-profile Tory donor who said that Diane Abbott inspired him to hate all black women and wanted to shoot her, and also Diane Abbott herself, you know, making inappropriate comments about racism and anti-Semitism and the likes. There's lots of transgressions going on, but I suppose to your point about, you know, what is behind this rise in all of that, and you obviously think it's about sort of public discourse, but is there, do you think Twitter has a role in all of this? Do you think that the fact that it's become OK and normalised to be quite un-British and very rude online as keyboard warriors, it's spilling over into real life? And you know, how do we change this?
So 2 points. I think, firstly, you're absolutely right that this isn't limited to one party. You've seen the Greens today, for example, have real problems with anti-Semitism in their ranks. There is a particular problem with Reform. It does seem to attract extremists into its ranks. They've got a series of problems across a different number of candidates. So I do think that needs to be taken more seriously by that party. To your point, I think absolutely social media is a key driver of this. I think what it has done is it has given a signal from people that that kind of abuse is normal. You get lots of, you know, the way the algorithm works, when you say something extreme, verging on violence, it's more likely to get promoted by the algorithm. More people are likely to see it. You're more likely to get more followers and more likes. And so that is distorting our politics. The reality is,
I agree,
in our country, the vast majority of people are in the middle of the road. They might strongly disagree with each other, but they wouldn't use violence. They wouldn't use intimidation. Social media is creating an atmosphere where that becomes more normalised, and that is a problem.
Brendan, good luck with what you're trying to do. Good talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to bring you up to date with the other stories that are coming into the newsroom this morning. President Joe Biden's son Hunter has been convicted of lying about his drug use to illegally buy a gun. A jury found that the 52-year-old was guilty on all 3 counts against him. It makes him the first child of a sitting president to be convicted of a crime. The president released a statement accepting the outcome, saying, "I am the president, but I'm also a dad. Jill and I love our son, and we are so proud of the man he is today."
The latest survey of British social attitudes has revealed a record number of people don't trust the government. According to the survey, 45% of respondents almost never believe governments of any party are fully focused on the challenges facing the UK. A record 58% also said they almost never trust politicians of any party to tell the truth. That's a 19-point increase since 2020.
Mallorca's International Airport was closed yesterday due to flooding caused by heavy rain. Flights were unable to take off or land. The Mallorca Daily Bulletin eyewitness described the flooding as chaos, and a local weather station recorded nearly 5 centimetres of water in just an hour. Affected by what's going on in Mallorca. You've been travelling or unable to travel or are there Tell us what it's like. Get in touch with us today, and there's how you do. That's how you get in touch, and we'll try and reflect that for you.
Where has the sun gone? I was in Lisbon at the weekend, couldn't see the sun. In fact, it was a wedding that we went for, and it rained during the outdoor service, which you wouldn't expect. Apparently, it only rained 2 other times in the last year. That was over Christmas and New Year. So what is going on? We've got these cold temperatures. I lit my fire on Monday night. Don't know about you. It doesn't feel like June just yet. Perhaps Alex Deakin can give us an insight on what's going on.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another chilly one out there this morning. For most of us, though, it's going to be a fine day with lighter winds feeling just a touch warmer than yesterday. But it's certainly cold out there this morning. We've had clear skies through the night. Does mean quite a few of us waking up to blue skies this morning. A few showers are possible today across parts of Yorkshire down to the East Midlands, East Anglia, 1 or 2 over North East Scotland. But most places dry. Quite a bit of cloud by this afternoon, but still some decent spells of sunshine, particularly in the west. And temperatures a little bit higher than yesterday. Still below average for most of us for the time of year, but with lighter winds, a bit more sunshine, it should at least feel a little bit more like June. Through this evening, I think we'll see those temperatures falling off again pretty sharply. Still quite a bit of cloud coming into the northeast. A few scattered showers likely to continue across the Northern Isles. Still some good spells of sunshine across western Scotland. A bit more clouds across Northern Ireland come the afternoon and sticking around into the evening. The odd shower still possible over eastern England, but most of England and Wales will stay dry through this evening and some good spells of sunshine coming through. But as I said, temperatures dropping pretty speedily under those largely clear skies. It will be a bit of a chilly start again tomorrow morning. Signs of a change though on the way. Behind me the cloud is starting to thicken. The breeze is starting to pick up as well. So through the night it'll turn cloudy across Northern Ireland, western parts of Wales. But elsewhere generally clear skies and temperatures yet again dipping down into single figures, well down in some rural spots. Again, not far off freezing in some locations. Another bright start though for many central and eastern areas on Thursday, but here comes that change. Clouding over rapidly. Rain for Northern Ireland through the morning. That rain trickling into West Wales and southwest England, steadily spreading into parts of southwest Scotland and towards the end of the day into the Midlands. Much of eastern England, northern Scotland staying dry until quite late on. Temperatures ticking up a little bit, but still feeling cool as the wind and rain arrives.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, following on from what we were just talking to Brendan Cox about, the violence shown yesterday towards Nigel Farage, in the last few moments, South Yorkshire Police have charged Josh Greeley, 28-year-old man, with using threatening behaviour towards Nigel Farage after those objects were thrown at the Reform UK leader whilst he was campaigning. So that is a charge for Josh Greeley, 28 years old. And of course, we had 2 arrests last week after that milkshake thrown at Farage as well. Keep a close eye on all of that.
Wonder what will happen to him. Time 8:16, the Great British Giveaway. Have a go.
It's our summer spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash. £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer. Plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Still to come, Christopher Hope on the campaign trail, Paul Coit with your sport, all coming next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
D-Day was shrouded in secrecy. Ken Hay was days away from landing in Normandy and still didn't know what was happening.
I don't think we really appreciated what we were going into.
Actually, on D-Day, I was on a 30-mile route march, and we see the planes going over and that sort of thing. And we realised that wherever they were going, then we got the news that, in fact, it was Normandy, and we knew we were scheduled for that.
He arrived on Juno Beach at Coursieux-sur-Mer a few days after the main assault. The soldier's role was to push forward into enemy territory.
I didn't land on D-Day. I landed shortly after in June. I was in the infantry, so I was a rifleman and I was up the front.
While on night patrol on July 7th, his unit was attacked.
My brother was a corporal in the same platoon, and he was out with me. He got back. 16 of us out of 30 got back. 5 of us got captured, and 9 got killed.
Germans put him to work in a POW camp in Zabas, Poland. With Soviets advancing, the prisoners were forced to march for 1,000 miles.
At one point along there, my leg was chopped. I lay down in the snow. If it hadn't been for 2 guys who fell back in the column and picked me up, I'd have just gone to sleep and frozen to death. 2 American tanks turned up on the 22nd of April, Sunday afternoon, and we were liberated.
Ken feels pride for the role he played in Normandy and thanks God for keeping him alive.
People say, why did you volunteer for the services? It was a completely different atmosphere then. You did your bit.
The People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're going to check in with our political editor, Christopher Hope, this morning. Hot off the heels of the manifesto launch yesterday, Christopher, and at King's Cross Station this morning following the Prime Minister. Does he have a spring in his step? I'm looking across the right-wing press. Seems to have been received pretty well in all of the papers, apart from The Guardian, so you'd probably be quite pleased with that.
Well, that's right. Morning, both. Morning, Eamonn. Morning, Isabel. That's right. I'm here at King's Cross Station, about to set off again on another day up north, this time with the Prime Minister in the northeast of England. Yeah, there's a feeling, I think, though, and certainly in the room yesterday at Silverstone, that it wasn't enough tiger in the tank of the Tory party. It was a bit expected. No drama of a big moment, a big offering to those on the right of the party defecting and going to the Reform UK party. A poll out last night gave the Tories on 18 points, Reform on 17 points, and Labour at 38 points. If you add the Reform and Tories support together, you get to 35, just narrowly behind Labour. So if he can square off that Reform UK support and get more don't knows on side, it's a neck-and-neck race. If that hasn't happened, that right-wing vote has been split by Reform, so there wasn't really enough, I think, to deal with that problem yesterday. But we're looking at the detail here. I think today's focus is on table 2 of a costings document given out yesterday by the Tory party. In it, they say here they can save £18 billion from welfare reform and in closing the tax gap, the difference between tax owed and tax received by HMRC. That figure, 18 billion, covers the cost of 17.2 billion of tax cuts in the manifesto. And it's that debate about whether those savings are going to work, which I think will dominate today with the Tory party.
Christopher, thank you very much indeed. We'll leave it there. 23 minutes nearly past 8 o'clock. Paul Coyte, the sport. England were on the training pitch yesterday.
Yeah, a few days to go. We're 2 days to go until the Euros begin. Scotland started off against Germany on Friday. England will play on Sunday against Serbia. So Gareth Southgate We're just looking at it's just little tidbits of stuff that's coming out of the camp now. And Bild, who's the German magazine, have printed a story saying that Gareth Southgate has said that it's now or never. So if we don't win this year, the chances are he won't be the England manager. And I don't think that's any big secret. I think he will walk. I think if we don't actually win it this year, I think that will be the end of Gareth Southgate. But where he goes after that, whether any club's going to take him, I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, it's all the start. Anyway, it's all getting underway.
Getting underway, the preparations for Wimbledon, leading up to those. And for those, Emma Raducanu has gone to the Nottingham Open to play on grass.
She's nearly 300th in the world now. It's really, she did win a game, so she's playing on grass. I don't know how long everybody's patience is going to last with Emma Raducanu. We're still hanging on there. She did win a game. She got a little upset, though, with line calls. It's interesting because we were talking about that with the games yesterday. At Nottingham, that there were some very strange umpiring decisions. And she said yesterday that it wasn't like she was only playing her opponent, that she was playing the umpire as well. So she was very unhappy. But anyway, she's got through, so she's OK. The big news, which has come out of America, July the 4th, is the Nathan's hot dog eating competition. The finest hot dog eater in the world, Joey Chestnut, who we said, what was it, 71, I think? We was 71 in 10 minutes. Anyway, he's not going to look. Let's have a look at the action, shall we? Have we got a bit of Joey? There's a picture of Joey. I think we've got some.
Has he a big belly?
He's not really. I don't know what
big mouth.
Is that actually is that him or is that a picture of him on a stick? But there we are. That's him in action, shoveling in the hot dogs. So the thing is, he's got a sponsorship deal with a vegan hot dog company who are rivals to Nathan's. I mean, this is who run this one, which is on Coney Island. So the money, I mean, they're saying that he was offered a £1.2 million deal to be in 3 of their competitions. This is big money. So, I mean, this competitive eating, and I don't know where it all goes. 71 hot dogs.
Into his belly, like everything else.
I know, but the thing is, well, but how can they receive, if you see, like there's many hot dogs like that, and he's like this. Do we do some birthdays before we go?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Great. Whose birthday is it today?
Very good friend of ours' birthday today.
Oh, very good friend. Oh, right.
There we are. Let's see. How old is he today? We've got the first one, please. One of our finest friends, which I'm very much hoping that we will see. There he is. It's Big Pat.
Okay.
Big Pat Jennings there with Billy Bingham.
Yeah, right. And so it's Pat's birthday today.
Pat's birthday today.
Good one, good one, good one.
How old is Big Pat today?
Pat has to be...
You overcooked this last year. I remember we did it last year. You overcooked slightly.
OK, I'll say Pat's 73.
73 for Big Pat Jennings? What do you reckon, Isabel?
71.
79.
Oh.
Wow.
Pat's 79.
He looks well.
He does look well.
And he's got the same haircut that he's always had.
Exactly the same. Exactly the same. You want to go for one more?
Yeah.
OK, another one. England Rugby World Cup winner. Look, I was just about to say he's looking moody because it is Lewis Moody, the Mad Dog.
Yeah.
2003 World Cup winner. Another friend of ours as well, Lewis Moody. So
42.
42 for Lewis?
Yeah, 45.
Both slightly on the low side. Go again.
On the low side?
Slightly on
45.
the low side. 45? Well, Eamonn said 45.
48.
46.
Ooh.
46. Happy birthday, Lewis.
So you ruled me out for saying 45.
No.
Right, you thought...
I said a little on the low side.
It's basically it was just a little.
Well, I said little.
I would demand VAR on that one.
Well, what do you want me to say?
Well, you could have said, yes, even that's close enough, we'll give you the points.
I tell you, if David Coleman was doing Question of Sport, he would have had none of your nonsense.
1-0.
He would have had none of your nonsense.
1-0.
1-0, Webster.
Thank you very much indeed, my friend.
Thank you.
That's you done today.
I know, yeah.
That's you done.
By the way, I've had a lovely time. Thanks for having me. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
I'll be back.
Coming up, stay with us. Scarlett Maguire, Claire Muldoon to have a lovely time with us, going through the newspapers. See you in a moment.
The latest GB News travel. Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Lancashire, the A59, the Whalley Road in Samlesbury is blocked eastbound for emergency repairs just after the A67 Preston New Road junction. There are delays as a result. On Merseyside, Balliol Road East in Bootle remains closed eastbound from the A565 Derby Road to Breeze Hill after an oil spill yesterday evening. In Warwickshire, the A444 is closed each way along Weddington Road off the A5 in Nuneaton after an accident. And 42 in Warwickshire is taking around 3/4 of an hour now southbound from junction 9 at Curdworth to 6 for the A45. On the M25 from Essex into Hertfordshire, there are anti-clockwise delays in patches from junction 27 for the M11 past 25 for the A10 because of roadworks. Clockwise queues from junction 4 at Orpington to 5 for the M26, taking nearly half an hour on the M26 towards the M25. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
We're joined this morning by Claire Muldoon, Scarlett Maguire. We're taking a look through the papers and there's plenty in them. Where should we start? Claire, the Greens in The Guardian are looking to win over renters with a manifesto housing pledge. What are they saying?
Scarlett, you mean?
Yes, did I say Claire? I'm so sorry.
OK, no. I mean, what they're saying is that they're going to do more houses. The renters are going to have proper controls so that because at the moment you can just be evicted. And although the Conservatives in their manifesto promised that they would redo renters, in the 5 years they've never managed to do it, and it was one of the things that went down. But actually, what's interesting about the Greens is they're barely covered, right? The Greens have had an MP, unlike Reform. They've had an MP for the last few years. Actually, a very, very good MP, and they look. Caroline Lucas. Yeah. They won an awful lot of seats in the council elections. Yeah. Reform won 2, one of which was in Portsmouth, where Labour only put up 2 people for the 3 seats.
Haven't been around as long as the Greens, and the Greens are absolutely helping the SNP bury Scotland as a country. So they've done nothing but harm up there in terms of the gender recognition bills that are going through in Scotland. So I am not a fan of the Greens at all. And back to renters. I'm a renter where I can find a flat, that is. But it's just appalling out there. But landlords could always send a Section 21 if they wanted to sell their house, if they wanted a family member to move in, or for outstanding rent. So nothing's actually changed. Although the narrative is it's safe for renters now, you will not be evicted. It's not the case. It's not the case at all.
No, it's not. But actually, I mean, I know that you really dislike the Greens because of Scotland. What I'm saying is that if you compare the coverage of Reform versus the Greens have councillors. The Greens might actually unseat a member of the Labour shadow cabinet in Bristol. I mean, they could end up with 4 MPs.
Their polling is, though, because that is an interesting point to make. You might not agree with it, but actually Reform's polling much higher than even the Lib Dems, who've got obviously more seats than either of those. So it's interesting to reflect that.
I mean, they always get the media attention, and they do not win. They don't win. I mean, that's what's interesting.
Might they not win because they don't have decent manifestos and no one wants
Reform? No, it's Reform that doesn't win. I mean, actually, the Greens have an awful lot of councillors. Reform has
that may all change. We'll have to wait and see. But actually, the Greens were sort of absolutely involved in bringing down Humza Yousaf, so you must see that.
As the only positive then, because you know how much I dislike him and the cabal that's up there. # shut down that shortbread Senate. ASAP.
Claire, wait a minute. I'd rather talk about bikinis, but actually what we're going to do is hold that thought. We're going to speak to the Shadow Secretary for Transport. We say hello, good morning to Louise Haig. Louise, good morning to you.
Good morning.
So, potholes on your mind today?
Absolutely. Well, they're on lots of people's minds, aren't they? The state of our roads is a massive cost of living issue for drivers. We're all seeing our car insurance premiums driven up because of the cost of repairs. It's estimated that drivers had to shell out £500 million last year in pothole-related incidents, and with an average of £250 per driver. So that's why we've announced that we will defer a specific road project that was originally destined for the next Parliament into the next road investment strategy to release that money in order to invest in roads right across England, repairing and preventing up to 1 million potholes per year.
Louise, it still won't be enough. I mean, I'm not criticising you for that. I mean, the task in front of you is just mega, mega, mega.
Absolutely, on a whole range of issues, and we know the state of the economy that we will be inheriting if we're lucky enough to win the election, that we know the state of the public services, but we know this is a massive priority. We know lots of your viewers will be tearing their hair out at the state of their local roads and the damage it does to their cars and how dangerous it is. I talk to people all the time who are having to swerve potholes and run the risk of colliding with other vehicles. So that's why it's a priority for us. But we know it's a huge challenge, and this is why we're setting out these first steps to tackle it.
Could I ask you about the science of all of this? Have you to re-examine, re-look, re-evaluate how we actually fill in potholes, the technology involved?
Definitely, and I know that is a massive frustration for people when they see their local council or a subcontractor coming along and patching up a pothole, and then the rain comes down and it reappears just a few weeks or months later. It's really poor value for money. That's why we need to have proper road surfacing treatment that expands the life expectancy of roads and reduces the need to keep on investing. It's much better value for money over the long term, but it does require local authorities to have longer-term budgets so that they can invest in the prevention, whether that be new technology or different types of road surfacing treatment. This is absolutely what we're announcing today, rather than constantly coming along and patching up and council taxpayers having to pay the price over and over again, as well as the cost being passed on to drivers
Louise,
and car insurance.
just an observation, and for what it's worth, I think until you guys or local authorities stop granting cable companies the right to dig up everybody's roads after they've been repaired and whatever, that is a big danger. I'm just saying that I think you could put cables overhead on pylons and whatever, but as soon as you start digging up the roads again, everything goes to pot.
Yeah, it is a massive issue. You're absolutely right, and it's really difficult to negotiate. It's the same when you lay tram tracks and any kind of infrastructure delivery with cables and underground cables. So that is something that needs to be redressed in the balance between the rights of utility providers and the rights of local authorities and other infrastructure providers.
Louise, hey, you talk about our viewers and listeners tearing their hair out about potholes, and I think you're absolutely right. But what our viewers and listeners will also be doing is laughing at the idea of Labour trying to be the party for drivers. You only have to look at the disaster in Wales with the 20-mile-an-hour rollout there and the State of London under Sadiq Khan. I mean, drivers absolutely fed up with Labour, and you only have to look at what happened in the Uxbridge by-election to understand what drivers think of Labour. It's a tough sell for you, this one.
Well, I think with the party that we're up against that's overseeing the car insurance premiums rise by an average of £200 over the last 2 years, the state of our local roads as a direct consequence of Tory policy, this is why we're setting out an agenda today that will actually tackle the cost of living for drivers and improve the state of our roads, rather than indulge in culture wars that the vast majority of drivers actually don't experience. Sadiq Khan was just elected again for a historic third term, so I think the people of London have given their verdict on him. But we want to make sure that we are putting money back in people's pockets and bringing down the cost of driving, particularly for those people who don't have an alternative. If you live in the countryside, you don't necessarily have access to a bus or a train. Now, separately to these plans, we want to radically reform public transport, so it is an option, but at the moment it's not an option for everyone, and that's why we want to bring down the cost of driving, which will be the main priority for the vast majority of your viewers.
And speaking of people who have been re-elected, possible Jeremy Corbyn might well be. How much of a problem is he for Sir Keir Starmer? I noticed that he was calling the Tory manifesto a Jeremy Corbyn-style manifesto, which is a bit rich, seeing as Sir Keir Starmer was serving under Corbyn just a few years ago. And then Corbyn hitting back, talking about Labour claiming that their plans are fully costed, and he was saying that's absolute nonsense. How much of a problem is Jeremy Corbyn sniping from the sidelines for you?
Well, look, what Keir said yesterday was that we have learnt our lessons from the 2019 general election manifesto. The people of this country roundly rejected it, and it led to us having our worst election defeat in our history. The Tories, by contrast, have obviously not learnt the lessons from the disastrous Liz Truss mini-budget, which led to interest rates being raised, and people are still now paying the cost of that with increased mortgages. What the Tories set out yesterday was billions of pounds in unfunded spending commitments, which would have an even bigger impact than Liz Truss's disastrous experiment less than 2 years ago. We've learnt our lessons. Tomorrow we'll be publishing our manifesto, which will set out a series of policies that will tackle the cost of living crisis, will rebuild our public services, but will be funded and will be costed.
And we will discuss all of that, as you'd expect, tomorrow. Just lastly, the front of the eye, talking about this Labour promise to introduce £12 an hour to care workers. I think most people would agree that care workers are terribly underpaid, and more should be done to recognise the hard work that they do. But I suppose the question is, since we're talking about how things are costed and funding, how would a Labour government pay for that? We know that government funds an awful lot of care. Would this mean an increase in local authority bills? I mean, how are you going to pay for that?
So I don't know where I got their story from. That's not a reflection of any commitment. What we have committed to is a fair pay agreement in the care sector, which will reflect negotiations on pay, because absolutely a lot of care workers are underpaid. Some don't even receive the minimum wage. But it will also reflect the issues about conditions in the care sector, the fact that there is a lack of opportunities to progress in the care service, the fact that a lot of care workers are not properly qualified to do the very medical work that some of them do in care homes and in the community. And that's why we've set out as a very early priority. We will negotiate with local authorities, with employers and with care workers to set in place a fair pay agreement that will tackle recruitment and retention in the care sector.
Louise, just getting back to your brief, you could be the future Secretary of State for Transport. And I don't know if you would have any powers on this front, but you talk about putting money back in people's pockets and whatever. I tell you what's in an awful state at the moment: car insurance. people will talk to you about just, I mean, these insurance companies are really having a laugh at our expense. There are some cars that you just can't get insured, for instance. Is that something that would be within your powers to look at?
Absolutely, and it's one of the elements of the plan that we've put out today. Car insurance has risen at a far greater rate than some of our European neighbours, and so we've said that we will bring in the Competition and Markets Authority to investigate the causes of that rise in insurance premiums, over £200 on average over the last 2 years. And we know they're employing lots of rip-off devices as well, so we'd want to bring in the Financial Conduct Authority to investigate several of those. We think they're far inflating the cost of pricing premiums onto consumers, so we would, as a priority, call in the regulators to tackle the insurance market in this country.
Louise, thank you. Appreciate it. Louise Haigh is the Shadow Secretary of State for Transport. Thank you for your time this morning. Thank you. So there you are, insurers. You have been warned. You're also going to be warned that Claire and Scarlett will be back, and they're going to be talking about bikinis and whether they love them or not right after this.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that. Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Recent polling suggests dentistry has become the hardest NHS service for patients to access, within NHS treatments still 15% lower than pre-pandemic levels. So a YouGov survey reveals that more than 70% of Brits describe seeing the dentist as difficult, compared with 64% for GPs and 42% for A&E services. One British man, get this, he even took to flying 10,000 miles for dental care, saying the extra time and money spent was far less hassle than trying to get an appointment on the NHS. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs. And a shocking 1/5 of UK adults have also admitted to trying DIY dentistry, including the old trick of tying string around a wobbly tooth and slamming it in the door so it comes out. So, should people be more careful when taking their teeth into their own hands?
That is one of the problems. Obviously, population growth makes it much more difficult for people to access NHS services, but they need to then catch up on the other side with dental services and increase the amount of dentists and access to dentistry, and especially NHS dentistry, obviously.
What's the cut-off age for free dentistry on the NHS?
So it is 18 years old, but there are exemptions around maternity, pregnancy. There's some free care around pregnancy.
We saw some data a few weeks back about the number one cause for child admission into A&E is tooth decay. I mean, that was shocking when I read it.
It's really bad, and what happens is people, kids with multiple decayed teeth, they basically have to be put under general anaesthetic, and then all those rotted teeth have to be extracted under general anaesthetic. Like, if those baby teeth start going crooked, then the adult teeth start going crooked as well. Right. So it is important to look after the baby teeth. It's really important. I think they should make it more central to their policies, definitely.
The People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. Claire Muldoon and Scarlett Maguire, I think, guessing, are probably women over 35 years of age.
Oh, Eamonn, how could you say that?
Well, maybe, I'm sorry, forgive me if I'm wrong.
You could have said a lot worse, darling. You could have said, I doubt these two women would wear a...
Well, it is.
I've set it up for you now.
The theory is, Claire, that women over 35 are saying, why can't we wear bikinis? So what is the view on bikinis on women over 35?
Any woman can wear a bikini if she feels fit enough, healthy enough, beautiful enough to do it. Personally, I wouldn't. I wouldn't subject anyone to that, let alone myself.
At 35?
At 35, I might have done, but I had 4 kids by that point, so you never know.
Well, Dame Helen Mirren obviously is the sort of pin-up girl, 78 years old and looks sensational. And I think she deserves a shout-out because last week when I was at the Portsmouth Memorial for D-Day, she presented the whole thing, no auto cue, all from memory, long monologues introducing complicated stories and histories with perfect composure. At 78, she is a national treasure. I thought she was sensational.
She's also tiny.
She is tiny.
Right. I mean, I was talking to a fashion designer and Helen just goes and gets stuff off the peg from her because she's a size 8.
Well, she's tiny, but she's got a lovely...
Perfectly proportioned... No, she's tiny.
I don't know what to say that's polite.
Yeah, she's not
It was the hand movement.
she's tiny little waist with big boobs, and she looks fantastic.
She's great.
But she's more than that. She's much more than that, and she was a fantastic performer last week.
Oh, she was.
They couldn't have chosen a better person.
So your view, Claire, about bikinis is that...
They're great things. They're actually easier to wear than full bathing costumes, and these beautiful women here in these pictures are stunning. And as we've said, Helen Mirren, poster girl for a bikini, aged 78. Childless, I just have to say.
Yeah, well, exactly.
You know, there is that.
There is that.
Children and men, they age you.
Well, yes.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
But there are some very lovely women who have had children.
Victoria Beckham, for example.
Yeah, and who can wear. But I mean, I'm with you, Claire. Anybody should be able to wear a bikini. It's a personal thing. I don't, but actually, when I used to, you're right, they're much easier than swimming costumes, which are just a pain.
My mum looks sensational bikini in her 70s.
I'm
so
sure
hats
you
off
will
to
as
her.
well.
I don't know.
So do you still, being slightly over 35, Isabel,
I still wear a bikini. Yes, I do.
Right, so we go from bikinis to skirts.
Yes, let's do this one.
Yeah, Alan Ebenezer sent a letter to parents at Caldecott School in Monmouthshire. He said that skirts should extend below the knee and no makeup should be worn. Now, it's interesting that we're talking about this. Certainly in the 70s, when I was at school, that would have been regular.
The norm, yes.
That would have been just regular. So what's the issue here, Claire?
200 girls have been sent into exclusion because their skirts are too short, they're wearing false eyelashes, false nails. These are teenagers. They're there for an education. The parents and one Labour councillor, he's misogynist. He's only targeting girls. I'm sorry, right?
Do boys wear short skirts?
Exactly.
Maybe. You never know.
Actually, the boys were sent home because they didn't have the right trousers and shoes.
From his previous school in Lincolnshire.
Right.
But I think this guy deserves a medal.
So do I.
He really does. It's in the little things. He's still educating these children.
Oh, come on, Claire. When I was at school, I mean, you know, one of our slight acts of rebellion was to have short skirts.
Yeah.
I mean, I do remember, and I just
But it wasn't allowed because it was an act of rebellion. This is the norm. It's becoming the norm for them, Scarlett.
No,
it's becoming de rigueur, and it's wrong.
I just think skirts down to your knee is quite long. I mean, I wear skirts down to my knee.
Actually, I do agree, Scarlett. When I was at school, we had to kneel on the floor and the teacher would come along with a ruler. And if it was more than 5 centimetres from the floor, it was too short. But actually, on the knee is very long. On the knee. It's kind of middle-aged, to be honest.
School is not a catwalk. It's not a fashion
but I
show.
think that it's a bit unrealistic to say that it has to be below the knee.
You're
but
there
makeup,
to be
there's no
more
place
than
for makeup
educated.
in school.
You're there to socialise. And
you don't need to socialise with a short skirt.
I think
next you'll be advocating bikinis.
I think the makeup upsets me more than the skirts, to be honest. I hate to see young girls with heavy lashes and all the rest of it. They're so naturally beautiful.
It's such a shame.
There's no need.
It's such a shame.
And also, the parents who send children to schools, part of the admission criteria is they actually sign an application form. That's basically a contract between the school and the parents.
Yeah.
So the parents know what they're signing up for. These are the school rules. You don't like it, take wee Jeannie out or take wee Sam out or Sam Genie, whatever they want to be, take them out and put them into whatever.
Claire, we used to go to school and then we used to roll up our skirts.
But you know, every generation seems to do that. Exactly what you're talking about. You know, I can remember the situation with my own daughter and whatever. But I do remember when I was at school, everything was a problem. I never had a problem with uniforms. I was fine with them. But the type of material you had, whether you were corduroy or natural materials, the size, the width of your tie.
And for the girls, whether you wore a tie, and I did lead the thing against not wearing ties because I really hated them. It was, I mean, it's
a rite of passage to wear. I hate all these polo shirts for young children in primary school. Wear the shirt and tie. It's smarter. It's a lot better for them. It's a rite of passage.
Well,
you've got Neighbours to thank for all of that. Neighbours brought in this whole idea in Britain.
The Australians?
That they didn't wear official uniforms. They wore sweatshirts and things like that.
But my children went to schools without uniform, and it was fine.
Such a rebel, such a rebel, you, Scarlett.
No. I mean, actually, there are lots of London state schools that do not have uniforms.
At primary school, we didn't have any sort of uniform at all. That was civic clothes you had, and then full rigueur at grammar school.
One of my dad's favourite stories about me when he was growing up, walking home from the station. He was coming home from work, and he was walking behind a girl in the school blazer that I had, and I thought, goodness me, what tarty girls at the school. Can't see her skirt. You could just see the blazer, no skirt. And then he saw this tarty girl turn into our road, and then saw this tarty girl turn into our house. And I was rolling my skirt down just as I got to the front door. I was in so much trouble. Never lived that one down.
Well, thank you both very much indeed. Very good to talk to both of you.
Thank you.
Claire Muldoon and Scarlett Maguire, thank you. Come back and see us again sometime. Right, we're going to get an update on the weather situation. I hope it's OK where you are. We believe there will be clear skies over the next few days. So let's find out. Alex Deakins, the man with the weather plan.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another chilly one out there this morning. For most of us, though, it's going to be a fine day with lighter winds, feeling just a touch warmer than yesterday. But it's certainly cold out there this morning. We've had clear skies through the night. Does mean quite a few of us waking up to blue skies this morning. A few showers are possible today, across parts of Yorkshire, down to the East Midlands, East Anglia, one or two over North East Scotland. But most places dry. Quite a bit of cloud by this afternoon, but still some decent spells of sunshine, particularly in the west. And temperatures a little bit higher than yesterday. Still below average for most of us for the time of year, but with lighter winds, a bit more sunshine, it should at least feel a little bit more like June. Through this evening, I think we'll see those temperatures falling off again pretty sharply. Still quite a bit of cloud coming into the northeast. A few scattered showers likely to continue across the Northern Isles. Still some good spells of sunshine across western Scotland. A bit more clouds across Northern Ireland come the afternoon and sticking around into the evening. The odd shower still possible over eastern England, but most of England and Wales will stay dry through this evening, and some good spells of sunshine coming through. But as I said, temperatures dropping pretty speedily under those largely clear skies. It will be a bit of a chilly start again tomorrow morning. Signs of a change though on the way. Behind me the cloud is starting to thicken. The breeze is starting to pick up as well. So through the night it'll turn cloudy across Northern Ireland, western parts of Wales. But elsewhere generally clear skies and temperatures yet again dipping down into single figures, well down in some rural spots. Again, not far off freezing in some locations. Another bright start though for many central and eastern areas on Thursday, but here comes that change. Clouding over rapidly. Rain for Northern Ireland through the morning. That rain trickling into West Wales and southwest England, steadily spreading into parts of southwest Scotland and towards the end of the day into the Midlands. Much of eastern England, northern Scotland staying dry until quite late on. Temperatures ticking up a little bit, but still feeling cool as the wind and rain arrives.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M9 in Falkirk is partly blocked northbound by an accident between junction 6 and 7 from Grangemouth to the M876, causing delays. In Lancashire, the A59 is partly blocked eastbound for emergency repairs just after the A677 in Samlesbury. It's sloped towards and past there. On Merseyside, Balliol Road East remains closed eastbound from the A565 Derby Road to Breeze Hill in Bootle after an oil spill yesterday evening. The M56 in Cheshire is partly blocked westbound by an accident between junctions 12 and 14 from Runcorn to the Chester Services, causing queues. In Warwickshire, the A444 is closed along Weddington Road off the A5 in Nuneaton after an accident. On the M42 in Warwickshire, it's taking 40 minutes southbound from junction 9 at Kirtworth to 6 for the A45 because of roadworks. On the M27 in Hampshire, there's a lane closed westbound where someone's broken down in junctions 9 and 8 from Fareham to Bursledon, causing queues. It's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We're making this summer funner, with 3 incredible prizes to be won. First, a fantastic £15,000 in tax-free cash that you can spend on anything you like. Next, there's the latest iPhone 15 with a brand new set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at the UK attraction of your choice. The summer fun could be on us. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Fast approaching 9 o'clock, Wednesday, the 12th of June.
You're tuned in to breakfast here on GB News. Good morning to you from Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Top story this morning, final roll of the dice for the Conservatives. They've launched their manifesto and promised £17 billion in tax cuts.
Labour turn an eye to local issues, promising to be the party of drivers. They say, we will fix 1 million potholes a year.
Renewed questions over the safety of MPs following another attack on Nigel Farage on the campaign trail yesterday.
The Lib Dems are promising to get tough on water regulation. They have a plan for a new watchdog for the industry.
An historic first as Joe Biden's son, Hunter, is found guilty on all 3 counts in his federal gun trial case, facing a possible 25 years prison sentence.
Morning. Another cold one out there this morning. For most of us, though, a fine day today. The weather is on the change, though, as we look to tomorrow and beyond. Join me later for a full forecast.
Just bringing you up to date on the campaign trail and what happened after yesterday and what's going to happen today. The Conservatives, they launched their election manifesto. The big thing in that, a £17 billion promise of tax cuts.
Yes, and Labour are set to turn their eye to local issues, pledging that they're the party of drivers, with a promise to fix 1 million potholes.
Lib Dems, well, they say we're going to get tough on the water industry. Details will be announced on that today, but basically they are proposing a new watchdog to tackle water pollution and sewage dumping.
And there are renewed questions about the safety on the campaign trail for candidates after Nigel Farage was hit again yesterday by wet cement and rubbish whilst campaigning. Earlier, we heard from the widower of murdered MP Joe Cox, Brendan.
I think it's deeply depressing that people think that you can resolve political disagreements with intimidation, with violence. And, you know, some people think these things are a joke, the throwing of the milkshakes, the throwing of eggs, the throwing of paper cups. But these things aren't, because what they do is that they create a poisonous culture.
I want to bring now political commentator Andy Williams on all of this. Andy, what about the safety of MPs and what happened to Nigel Farage yesterday? And I think it's important to point out it doesn't matter if you're a supporter of Nigel Farage or not, because this affects all elected representatives or people who hope to be.
I completely agree with that. You know, whatever you think of a particular politician's point of view, whether they're on the left or the right, they have a right to feel safe when they're out campaigning. You know, going out and knocking on thousands of people's doors that takes a lot of courage. And the very least, I think, that our politicians and our prospective politicians can expect is to feel safe when they're out on the streets. And all of this, I completely agree with your previous guest, whether it's throwing a milkshake or a drink at someone, even if that's not necessarily physically dangerous, it's that intimidatory aspect that I think is completely wrong.
What about the Conservative Party manifesto yesterday, Andy? You've got people like Rachel Reeves saying that Rishi Sunak's been cosplaying Liz Truss, and Starmer saying that this is a Jeremy Corbyn-style manifesto, giving away sweeties. But then you've got the right of the party saying, where's the rabbit in the hat? This hasn't gone far enough. It seems, doesn't it, to sort of demonstrate the rock and a hard place that the Prime Minister's in, where people want sort of Swedish-style public services but American-style taxation.
It definitely does. I don't think this manifesto is going to satisfy anyone. I mean, I think the bigger picture is that people really have, and you've seen it during the campaign and in the polling, people have stopped listening to the Conservatives and to Rishi Sunak. So actually any pledges he makes or has made, I think will struggle to cut through. The brand, the Conservative brand, whether it's on tax, whether it's on immigration, whether it's on defence, is really badly damaged because of promises that have been broken over a long period of time. But I think particularly if you look at tax, there's a big problem with this manifesto, which is that none of these are properly funded. You know, if you look at the £12 billion they say they're going to save in terms of welfare reform, or £6 billion in terms of efficiencies collecting more tax, there's no detail around this. So it's I think it's an open goal for Labour to say, hang on a minute, how are you funding this? And the fact that Keir Starmer is even remotely able to suggest that this is a Corbyn-style manifesto is incredible.
Let's go back. Let's look at the Conservatives and the Boris Johnson era. Of course, you know, he was heralded as, you know, the saviour of the Conservatives and whatever, and certainly that seemed to be the case as regards to the polls initially. How much responsibility does he have to bear for the decline, for the maelstrom that they find themselves in today?
I think he bears huge responsibility for a number of reasons. Firstly, because he had an 80-seat majority and there were newspaper headlines and he was openly talking about serving as Prime Minister for a decade. It's only 3 years since people were saying Boris Johnson could be Prime Minister for 2 terms, he could revolutionise Britain. That majority is halved, which is unbelievable, literally halved, as a result of the behaviour of Tory MPs, as a result of, frankly, Boris Johnson's huge misjudgments around parties in Downing Street and the lies that he told to the country. So I think when it comes to trust in politics, huge miscalculation.
Yes, but...
And actually, Sorry, Isabel, go on.
No, well, I was just going to say, look at there was another bombshell poll, wasn't there, last night, which put Reform at 1 percentage point behind the Conservatives. And what Boris was able to do was to be able to unite, whether it was UKIP or Reform at that point, and the sort of One Nation Conservatives to get that stonking majority. And if Sunak could do that, he would be much closer to the 38% that Labour are on. But at the moment, there is absolutely no love lost at all. And Reform is a real threat not only to the Conservatives, but to, well, I suppose the future of the Conservatives after the election.
Well, I've very little time for Boris Johnson, but he's a far superior politician to Rishi Sunak, that's for sure. And he was far more able, as you say, to unite people who had completely differing political views, from different backgrounds. He just had that touch. I think the problem is he lost people's trust. And when you lose people's trust, you struggle to come back. But you're right. It's incredible that Reform are 1% behind. They're taking a huge number. I think they're going to take a serious number of votes off the Conservatives in a lot of constituencies. We know that's probably not going to be reflected in seats, but Nigel Farage's entry into this election as a candidate in Essex is a massive moment. And I don't think Rishi Sunak has the charisma, the gumption. I don't think he really either has the argument to persuade people who are thinking about voting.
But Andy, I take on board all that you're saying there. I certainly would agree to it. You would say that Boris Johnson is a superior politician to Rishi Sunak, who's found lacking on so many fronts. And you were talking in terms of charisma and there. But that leaves us with Keir Starmer. I mean, defunct, devoid of any sort of personality and whatever.
He looks worried,
and
doesn't he?
by basically not saying anything or putting his neck on the line for anything, that's what works for him.
Well, I think he's a serious person for serious times. I think he's a good person. I think people believe that he's a good, moral person who cares about the country. I think people believe, because it's true, that he's in it for the right reasons. And no, he's not the shiny, exciting figure that maybe we would like. But I've said before on this programme, we've tried that with Boris Johnson. We've tried that with Liz Truss. Shiny and exciting doesn't necessarily work. Look at Donald Trump. He's very exciting. I don't think we'd want him in charge. So I'm not too concerned about Keir Starmer and perhaps his lack of charisma. I think he has a serious, intelligent, thoughtful group of people around him, and that's going to be good for the country.
Andy, always good talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. To America now, and we're talking about Joe Biden's son, Hunter, found guilty on all 3 counts in his federal gun case. Dr. Roger Gaywolf with us now in the studio to talk about this. And we were talking about Joe Biden earlier in the programme today and just how out of it he looks. He looks ill, to be quite truthful.
Yeah, he does. He does. But the Hunter Biden conviction yesterday, you were meant to say, oh, look, justice does work in America. Justice is being done. And then you're meant, they're saying, to fall further into the trap. I mean, filling out, that he wasn't using drugs on an application to buy a gun is a crime, slightly above lingering too long in the courthouse loo. It's all a setup. I mean, if you believe this, there's a couple of bridges over the Hudson River in New York.
A 25-year sentence, a possible 25
He's not going to get 25 minutes in jail. It's all fake. It's the coup de grace on Trump's trial. In other words,
that's why I wasn't expecting you to say that this morning, I have to say, because there are a lot of people from the right in America who wanted to see Hunter almost pay the price for what Trump has been through.
And Joe gave them that and said, look, I'm not going to pardon him. They're already saying this. I'm not criticizing the judge. I'm not being rude about the jury. We're not making a fuss. You see, democracy works. We didn't hijack the law. It works. It's in his home state in Delaware, which is the size of Ruddy Hampstead, which the Biden family virtually controls. It was a setup. There was probably, say, a number of pundits, a phone call to Joe. So do you want guilty or not? What do you want? It's all a setup to make it look like Joe Obama Biden has nothing to do with this and Hunter is fine.
Yeah, it is incredible, though. Sometimes you look at what Hunter Biden has been through, and if he has turned his life around, surely he expects some sort of applause for what he has done. So a sick man is not a sick man anymore, and they're going to stick him in jail for 25 years?
But they're not going to. Nobody gets that kind of sentence for this crime, Eamonn. It's in all the media in America.
What are they going to do? What's all this show that, he will be sentenced later?
He'll be sentenced. He'll probably be given a probationary sentence. He probably won't get any jail, the experts are saying in the States. And, all the people on the center and the right are saying it's a setup. It's part of a performance.
OK. Well, if it is, let's park it and see if it actually changes the dial in terms of November at all. Does this mean that Biden's got a clear run? to go for president? Or is the fact, as we saw him yesterday, stood frozen as if the man was there in body but not in mind? You know, people very alarmed to see the state of the president yesterday at the Juneteenth celebrations.
Absolutely, that's for sure, and he should not be judged by what his son has done. I mean, they're two totally separate things. Now, what is going to happen is, well, I don't know, but I mean, what the criticisms are is that the real crimes of Hunter involving his computer and alleged pornography and pedophilia, all sorts of terrible stuff, he's not being prosecuted for. He's being prosecuted for a minor infraction, filling out a form. And the impeachment proceedings going on about President Biden for selling influence and all sorts of stuff through Hunter in Ukraine, China, and Russia. Those impeachment proceedings are continuing, but there's no legal proceedings being brought, and that's what the Conservatives and the Republicans are complaining about.
He's got more charges to face, of course, more trials ahead of him.
One thinks, but the charges haven't been laid yet. There's just the impeachment proceedings.
Okay. What do you think will happen if, and this is a big if, President Biden is elected back into the White House? There was some suggestion this morning from a commentator for Republicans overseas, Greg Swenson, that actually the day after the election, Biden will be shuffled off out of the way and they'll find somebody else to replace him pretty pronto because they don't see him being able to do it for another 4 or 5 years.
There are rumors that have been swirling around for several months and reached kind of a crescendo that Joe Biden is going to stand down for health reasons on the 13th of June. That's tomorrow.
Who would replace him?
Gavin Newsom, they're saying, the left-wing governor of California. He's
never heard of him.
Oh, yeah, well, he's a very contentious, divisive figure. California has become the U-Haul capital of America, they say. U-Haul's a little trailer you buy when you want to move. You stick it on the back of your car. So loads of people have left California because of the laws of the crime, the taxes, and the rest. He's quite left, very popular with the left and not very popular with the right and the center. And he's the most likely candidate to replace him.
What chance would he have against Donald Trump?
The bookies are giving him a pretty decent chance. He's denying that he's going to replace Biden. He's denying that he has any presidential ambitions, but he's making all the moves that a presidential candidate would make. He's turning up at places, making speeches. He's doing all the things, if you were running for office, you would do. So the Hunter thing, it depends which camp you're in. But basically, the Trump and the Republican camp generally are saying we're not fooled by Hunter being charged with this very minor offense when he has in his home state with, you know, the Bidens controlling tiny Delaware for generations. He should be charged with the other things. That's not happened. They're just trying to show that they're fair, and the trial of Trump, therefore, was fair as well.
Okay, Roger, got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for the look there at the American political situation. We've got to go, Roger, because we've got a man who's got a train to catch. So let's go and see where, well, he's not going to tell us where he's heading, but who he's heading with. You're with the Conservatives again today, Chris.
That's right, Eamonn. Hi, Isabel. That's right. The train's been cancelled, so I'm able to come to you again from King's Cross. That's right. We'll be up with the Prime Minister later on in the northeast. Today, the Tories have changed their messaging, to use that political language, overnight. They're now saying they're warning against giving Labour a supermajority. I mean, it's been quite a defensive election campaign for the past 3 weeks. Most of the seats he's been to, Rishi Sunak, are seats he would have held with a big majority back in 2019. The Tories are just trying to, it's almost damage limitation. Today's focus is on this document, the costings document, because everyone's saying you can say you want to cut 17 billion in tax cuts up in Silverstone at the manifesto launched yesterday, but how will you pay for it? And in this document it says they'll be paying for it through savings on benefits and closing the tax gap, this difference between the tax the Treasury is meant to receive and actually receives in practice. So will they cut down on avoiders and evaders? That's £18 billion apparently. Some think that's unachievable. So the pressure today on the PM is to justify how on earth you pay for 17 billion of tax cuts with those savings.
Chris, sorry about that train cancellation, but don't you worry about it. We've got a helicopter. We're going to send a helicopter to pick you up there, my friend. Okay.
Sunak will pop in and give you a
Nothing
lift.
but the best. Nothing but the best for you. Cheers.
Oh, there's a metaphor in there
Thank you very
somewhere,
much.
isn't there, with the trains all up the spout. Anyway, this will cheer you up. Time for the Great British Giveaway, and it is quite a giveaway, and it should make your summer really special. Got to be in it to win it, though. Here are the details.
We're making this summer funner with 3 incredible prizes to be won. First, a fantastic £15,000 in tax-free cash that you can spend on anything you like. Next, there's the latest iPhone 15 with a brand new set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at the UK attraction of your choice. The summer fun could be on us. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. We're going to take a break there very quickly. We'll be getting a sneak peek into what's coming up in Britain's newsroom with Andrew and Bev right after this.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it? He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In places like News Corp, right, that an organisation I know reasonably well, when that poor guy died in America,
George Floyd, you're talking about?
Yes, they had a 9-minute silence for him, right? A more absurd and ridiculous idea I'd never come across in my life. How do you feel about 9 minutes for George Floyd?
Well, of course, that's the length of time that he was strangled by a police
I know why it
officer.
was, but how do you feel about that?
Well, I think a lot of the black staff in particular in News Corp probably appreciated the fact that it was taking a stand. And if you look at business...
Why do they need to take a stand about what the police do in the United States
Okay, well, what
of
about
America?
the guy... What about the jeweller tonight who has died in Richmond in Surrey when two, how should we put them, hoodlums of colour actually had a chokehold? He went home and he killed himself. There are lots of things going on in our world, as you well know, which are very upsetting. Okay. And if we're going to stop every time that somebody dies in unfortunate circumstances, we'll never get any work done.
Well, Stella, a final word to you.
I think sometimes, yes, equality and diversity can be a waste of money when it goes to things that are not necessary for the function of the organisation. But when just last year you had Birmingham Council being pushed into bankruptcy because they were found out to not have given women equal wages, then
because they paid bin men more than they paid cooks.
But then you can see Ben's point that if they had someone who was looking appropriately in equality and diversity and the actual practical policy implications of what they were doing, then maybe you wouldn't have this situation. You wouldn't have this legal liability. That's what Ben is saying. This is a multi-million pounds organisation. Like, it needs to have someone looking seriously and taking responsibility for these decisions.
The People's Channel.
What a time to be alive, said my director just now. Britain's newsroom coming up at 9:30. Andrew Pearce, fresh off a motorbike, and Bev Turner here looking very glamorous this morning.
Fresh off his motorbike. I'm always worried about his hair when he gets off his motorbike.
Sort of windswept.
I have to say, it's not my motorbike, I'm pillion.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Can't imagine you would not want me driving a motorbike of that size. It is enormous.
Is it? I quite like it though, don't you?
It's like a motorcade.
You in his leathers.
All that. Move on.
OK, so what have you got for us today?
Well, we're going to talk about Labour going to tell
Sorry,
us...
I've thrown him on the...
Talking of cars rather than motorbikes,
Yeah.
Labour tell us in their manifesto, which is getting tomorrow, that we're all going to have to buy an electric car by 2030. Shadow Transport Secretary asked the obvious question, so, how's your electric car? She doesn't have one. Don't they drive you nuts, these politicians? Do as I say, not what I do.
Trying to tell us that they're going to be the party of the car when Sadiq Khan has made it impossible to drive in London and impossible to drive in Wales under Labour-run Wales with the 20-mile-an-hour.
And they're also going to clear up all these potholes, a very laudable aim. But if you live in Sussex, you're not going to be very happy because they're cancelling a £328 million bypass, which has been long on the drawing board in Sussex, which people really badly want.
To fill in potholes.
And they're talking
in probably
about,
another county.
And they use the word about the neglect of potholes. You have neglected the potholes. You are to blame for this. And the public see right through it, the idea that suddenly they can fix all these potholes. Well, they haven't done it. Why? Because they don't really care enough.
Labour councils have got potholes. What have they done about them?
Yeah, no, it's a bit of a joke, isn't it? We got David Davis in the first half an hour and also Kevin Maguire as well, so there'll be some really good debates about these topics that came out of the manifestos yesterday.
And you want to talk about no dishy rishy? That's
When
my
you're
favourite
asked,
line of the
Prime
morning.
Minister, did you struggle? Can you relate to people when he's married to a very rich woman and he's trying to tell us as he was growing up they struggled. Look, he went to one of the most expensive private schools. He should have just... I'd have said, my parents struggled to send me to a very smart private school. I won a scholarship, but actually I was lucky. We didn't struggle like other people.
But what he's done...
And people would respect him more for it.
He's tried to think on his feet, and he's playing to the right because of this stereotype that if you're on benefits, you've always got a Sky dish.
Yeah.
So he's just sort of pulled that, robotically kind of pulled that out of somewhere, thinking, I will appeal to the right and I will say, I went without Sky TV. But look, how many people on benefits who have Sky TV? But it just doesn't land and it's just not true.
And also, back in the early 90s, when he's talking about as a child, very few people did have Sky.
Yeah.
It's not like now, where everybody has it.
Yeah.
In those days, you saw very few
It would have been
Sky
more
dishes.
normal not to have it.
It was normal not to.
My age. I don't know. I feel like there were lots
But
of us
also, it's just like...
He's not even 40.
It's OK to say, I didn't have to go without.
Yeah,
because
it
I was
is.
really lucky, because my parents worked really hard. And do you know what? Hard work pays.
And you know...
Like, think on your feet, come up with
I
something.
know. And Boris was so comfortable in the fact he was a posh privileged boy who went to Eton. He would have dealt with that very easy. Michael Heseltine is worth about 500 million quid.
Yeah.
He would have batted that away.
You know, it's funny what Bev was saying there, because when I think back to my childhood, I suppose I went without lots of things, but I was never aware of it.
Correct.
Absolutely never aware of it.
Yeah, because probably the neighbours in the street, the kids you went to school with, went without the same stuff.
Yeah.
Which was, in my case, certainly the case.
Very true.
Well, we're looking forward to the show. It sounds like a cracker. We will see you again very soon. That's it from us for this morning, though.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another chilly one out there this morning. For most of us, though, it's going to be a fine day with lighter winds feeling just a touch warmer than yesterday. But it's certainly cold out there this morning. We've had clear skies through the night. Does mean quite a few of us waking up to blue skies this morning. A few showers are possible today across parts of Yorkshire, down to the East Midlands, East Anglia, one or two over North East Scotland. But most places dry. Quite a bit of cloud by this afternoon, but still some decent spells of sunshine, particularly in the west. And temperatures a little bit higher than yesterday. Still below average for most of us for the time of year, but with lighter winds, a bit more sunshine, it should at least feel a little bit more like June. Through this evening, I think we'll see those temperatures falling off again pretty sharply. Still quite a bit of cloud coming into the northeast. A few scattered showers likely to continue across the Northern Isles. Still some good spells of sunshine across western Scotland. A bit more clouds across Northern Ireland come the afternoon and sticking around into the evening. The odd shower still possible over eastern England, but most of England and Wales will stay dry through this evening, and some good spells of sunshine coming through. But as I said, temperatures dropping pretty speedily under those largely clear skies. skies. It will be a bit of a chilly start again tomorrow morning. Signs of a change, though, on the way. Behind me, the cloud is starting to thicken. The breeze is starting to pick up as well. So through the night, it'll turn cloudy across Northern Ireland, western parts of Wales. But elsewhere, generally clear skies and temperatures yet again dipping down into single figures, well down in some rural spots. Again, not far off freezing in some locations. Another bright start, though, for many central and eastern areas on Thursday. But here comes that change. Clouding over rapidly. Rain for Northern Ireland through the morning. That rain trickling into West Wales and southwest England, steadily spreading into parts of southwest Scotland and towards the end of the day into the Midlands. Much of eastern England, northern Scotland staying dry until quite late on. Temperatures ticking up a little bit, but still feeling cool as the wind and rain arrives.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On Merseyside, Balliol Road East in Bootle remains closed eastbound off the A565 Derby Road after an oil spill yesterday evening. On the M56 in Cheshire, there's a lane closed westbound after an accident between junctions 12 and 14. From Runcorn to the Chester services, there are long delays towards there with queues from junction 11 at Preston Brook, and it's slow eastbound past the scene. On the M1 in Leicestershire, the southbound exit at junction 23A for the A42 at Kegworth is blocked by an accident causing queues. In Warwickshire, the A444 is closed along Weddington Road off the A5 in Nuneaton after an accident. On the M42 in Warwickshire, it's taking over half an hour southbound from junction 9 at Curdworth to 6 for the A45 because of roadworks. And in Northamptonshire, the A14 is partly blocked eastbound in junctions 4 and 5 near Rothwell, causing delays. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
I've got a grade 3 astrocytoma brain tumour. Once I was diagnosed, I tried to do my claim with my insurance company and was rejected. They then also cancelled my life insurance and also cancelled my wife's policies as well.
And this is Zurich Insurance, John.
This is Zurich,
and their point was, because you'd had some dizzy spells, which you hadn't told them about, they say dizzy spells equates to a brain tumour, which there's no evidence to support that.
I was with King's College Hospital. They ignored them. King's College Hospital were the experts.
So you were expecting £25,000?
Yeah, that was a critical illness claim.
Critical illness, because you've got a critical illness. Clearly, it couldn't be more critical, could it?
No.